I'm gonna give her a couple of minutes and then we'll just start. Yeah, I think we should. Okay. It's not her. Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm going. About 2 weeks. About 2 weeks. So jet lag will do what it will do, but yeah, it should be great. It should be great. Let's see. All right, I think we need to get going. Okay. Okay. I'm going to call the study session to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Flynn is absent. Councilmember Hefty. Councilmember Walter.
Here.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Present.
Mayor Haskell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. All right, so today we have a study session from 6 to 7, and the rules are going to work a little differently. I'm going to ask Mark to give his initial remarks to guide us on what the objectives of this hour meeting are going to be. I will note that this is a lot to get through potentially in an hour. And so our plan would be to uh, take a recess from this at 7 o'clock when the regular meeting occurs. And then assuming time will permit, because we've had a couple of items drop out of our regular session agenda, reconvene the study session after the regular session. So it's a little unusual. I'll try and give the guidance that I can to the public and to the council on what's next. But Mark, if you have opening comments, feel free to start.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, council members. Couple quick things. First of all, what I'm hopeful tonight is that we can have a conversation among yourselves, myself, and so on. It doesn't have to be like, this is a study session. It's not a regular council meeting in that sense. And I'm also hopeful that we can ultimately look at what success looks like on the priority that you nailed down. I'm looking for 3 to 5 priorities to really focus on between now and the time you get a new town manager or the end of December. And what we will try to do is keep track of comments, but also show what, by summary, what we've heard. And then we come back, or we'll come back potentially at the end of this meeting, and we'll be back on the 9th with kind of a chance to really vote. So this is not a voting on the priorities so much tonight, it's identifying. That's basically it. So we'll be looking at what we can do by the 30th of June. And of course, we know we have the budget to do, and we know we have the town manager interviews and all that stuff to do. So that's a given. But thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and just, this might be overlapping in part, but because it is an unusual agenda, we're going to take oral comments at the beginning of the regular session. We want to optimize the ability of the council to get through the priorities that were set last year and set a time frame for each item that is not yet complete, and then additionally try and see if there's any refinements that need to be taken into account at a high level. I think it would be helpful if we're going through to say whether something is a priority for mid-year, so July 1st, or end of year, and I'm roughly speaking December 1st because of the holidays, but sometime in December. Or it's okay to leave things as priorities, but not allocated to one of those timeframes. And given our resource constraints, we probably need to be very careful in selecting the near term and December timeframe priorities. The staff is going to take rough notes as we talk. They might know the timeframes that we suggest that are recorded. They may take other notes, but don't get distracted. They're not going to take real-time notes or anything. They're going to come back after we get through everything and summarize, polish the document, and then we'll get a chance to ratify that at a future meeting. So tonight, we're not finalizing anything. We're having a good discussion, and then it'll come back for ratification in the future. So my suggestion, because there are 5 general categories, to go through them one by one. So, for example, fiscal responsibility and long-term viability, get through all of those, comment on timing and any refinements. There doesn't have to be any. We're not really looking for them. But these are priorities that were set a year ago. It's sometime in the next year, we will have a new opportunity to start with more of a blank page on priorities. But tonight, we're trying to give Mark and staff guidance on what to focus on. And so he'll then work with staff to agendize the items, get to the next level of detail about how to raise it. So to Mark's point about what does success look like, what do we want to have done rather than how do we want to get there is the focus of this discussion. Okay, that's the intro. And so if you all have the priorities from last year in front of you, and Corey, I don't know if you want to pull it up. Thank
There
you.
go.
So yes.
Mayor, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna keep an eye here to see if somebody wants to make a comment,
I'll
just so you know.
I wouldn't think so because I'm not connected. Yeah, I'm not even connected. So does everybody have their audio completely off? Okay. I'll underscore it, but I don't think that's me. Thank you. No worries. Make significant progress toward them. And essentially, Mark and staff, what are we aiming for mid-year? And I think one question for us to comment on is going to be, what do we need to set ourselves up in order to put ourselves in a position to do what we need to do financially in the next year? And that includes potential revenue enhancement measures. So I would suggest we look at these in terms of what needs to happen in order to set us up for success on that. I do want to open this up. My suggestion is each member of the council can go through the line items, all of them on the fiscal responsibility block, and give their thoughts on timing and that they would recommend, in other words, a priority for mid-year or end of year. And then any other comments that they might have. So Mary, do you want to start, or would you want
On the
somebody else to
entire,
start?
on all of them? or
On
only
all
one
of
person?
the fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, but
items.
all of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have plenty of comments. I think it's really great that we can move along with, that we feel we've completed the staff planning for the finance department. And I guess the only thing there that I keep coming back to is, will we be ready for the ballot measure when we have to do the ballot measure? So how are all that progress on audits and all that progress in communication done to make us ready? So that's my one thing that I'm still not sure about is scaling issues for the town, whether we're the right, whether as a town, we're the right size to do the kind of work we want to do, and whether that, how that fits into our viability. Because this is about viability, right? Long-term viability. And I've never really been informed on that part, and nor have I gone out to try and make myself be informed on what functions a 4,000 person town can perform, or should be performing, and whether we should scale up or scale down, or what we should do. So educating the community, I think we've done really well on. I'd say more than midway. And implementing the recommendations, I thought we were done with that, but I guess not. So that's good to know. Completing the audits, I put 12/31/2025 because I thought that it was 100% realistic, and if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to do a ballot measurement. That was my basic scenario about that. And that final should be convincing enough so that we can put out financial analysis of scenarios. So midway, I just thought as a of it that we make sure that in particular developing and implementing the necessary infrastructure to effect, process, and collect fees. My comment on that is what I see is lacking. It may or may not be lacking, but it appears from a resident's point of view that monitoring PV Connect and getting back to the residents about things that come up on PV Connect so that the council can rely on PV Connect as, well, go there, and then somebody will get back to you in 2 days or 1 day or whatever the goal is. And I thought that was important enough that the Nexus and the cashing of checks and the PV Connect, et cetera, that we are completely through that by June, by the end of June. So the last one came under the heading of the end of June for me, because if we haven't done those, we're not ready to move forward.
Okay, so you think we're mostly through the financial management structure?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Craig, what do you have?
Well, obviously Tony's been doing a great job of moving us forward on the finance stuff. The articulate plan for finances and financial management, to me, there's a broader discussion there, which is level of services that we're going to deliver. And I think we need to make some decisions, and I think we need to make them by July on, Mary, I think this is playing to a little bit what you're talking about is, what services are we as a town of 4,000 going to deliver? Because then that's going to make a difference on, how much revenue do we need to raise relative to the revenue we're bringing in. So if that strategy includes that, that's fine. Otherwise, I'd suggest something that talks about the level of services that we deliver both in planning and in safety. And in safety, I'd, include wildfire preparedness and other things. And planning obviously is, are we getting permits through the system? And, can people expect their projects to move forward? Educating on the community, again, I would put that for beginning of July. I think Tony's already, he's scheduling some community meetings to discuss that. So I would expect that to get done. I trust Tony on Kirsch getting done in the appropriate time. So if that's by July or if that's at the end of the year, as long as we're just closing those out so we've got solid financial controls, that makes sense to me. Same thing with the audits, getting the audits done by the end of the year so we can move into next year. And if we need to do revenue enhancements, we'll have the audits done. Financial controls are done. Regular reports, again, I'm happy to have Tony do those as soon as he can, but no later than the end of the year. And then for infrastructure and fees, I think that's important, but compared to figuring out the level of service that we need to agree upon, I'd say that I'd put that second to that. So if we get that done by July, that would be great. But if it comes in later, I think I can live with that.
Would you want that done by the end of the year?
By the end of the year, yes, because I don't think we can know what our revenue picture looks like if we don't have a sense for the kind of fees that we're going to collect. So yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Um, so echoing a lot of what my colleagues said, a couple of things, planning for financing, for finances, a level of service, to be self-sufficient, right? As I'm watching the federal and the state machinations and now the county machinations over the budget, like, what do we need to do to provide core services? To be self-sufficient, right? As we look at revenue generating opportunities. So that was important to me so that we can, be self-determining and stay a town. And then the level of service also, like, we are, right now our level of service, all of us are on emails often about not getting permits and such. And you guys staff wise, like, you guys are at capacity, I get it. So we need to figure out what other staffing we need and how to pay them. Apparently our benefits are behind. And so I know Mark is looking at that, and Corey, I believe, to be competitive. In terms also of the infrastructure, we need to make sure that our infrastructure is safe, right? Our roads are at a C. Pavement ranking or ratings. And if anyone's been noticing up and down Alpine, we have cracks up and down the road. I'm worried about our infrastructure. So, what is that going to cost? As well as, Alpine Road is, the best evacuation route that we have, right? Overall. Let's see. Okay. And then always trying to be transparent with the community and educate the community. I was the in progress midway. I'd love, instead of midway, if something's, 3/4 of the way or a quarter of the way, like midway makes it sounds like it's halfway. So it'd be good to know where in the progress, staff is at. So. I think that's, do you need anything else?
If you have one or more that you'd like to prioritize or that should be prioritized by July versus December.
I actually think to get a plan in place to figure out what we need to get on the ballot, the revenue options that we have. There's this very strict deadline to be on the ballot. We are a year out, less than a year, 11 and a half months. Usually you have to have, I can't remember, 180 days or something. I don't know what the timeline is, but we have to be ready to go. If that's what we decide to do. And so that is a priority for me, and that plays into the finances, the plan for the finances.
Makes sense to me. I'm largely in agreement. I don't know if Tony, if you would care to comment or if you want to just talk with Mark offline. But what I'm struggling with is and I agree with the priority being getting on the ballot, whatever we want to get on the ballot. I also agree that we have to educate the public on what we want to do and why. So I don't know, Tony, if you have any thoughts on like the have-to-haves versus like July versus December. And if you don't, that's totally fine. We can let you talk with Mark offline and come back in the item we want to ratify. But that's something I think is really in your court and another staff court rather than me having an opinion on it. But it's so important to get there. We need to line everything up to get there. Oh, please.
So in terms of the deadline to place an item on the ballot, it must be placed by council action at least 88 days before the election. So for this revenue measure, where we'd be looking at Charter Town, that can only be placed, in order to generate for a general tax, can only be placed on a regular municipal ballot where you're electing council members. So we'd be looking at November of 2026. And so the deadline, drop dead, would fall that first week of August, 2026. Now, of course, there's a lot of lead up work to that in terms of.
2025?
I'm sorry, no, 2026. So
Okay,
first week of August, 2026 is the deadline for the council action
okay.
to place the measure on the ballot. But there's a lot of lead up work to that in terms of educating the community. A lot of times there's polling, preparation of the ballot materials and all that. So I hope that helps.
Can I, yeah, okay, thanks. Can I get clarification for just a general, parcel tax and the deadlines for parcel tax instead? Because,
Yeah. It would be the same deadline for a parcel tax. Parcel taxes also need to be, actually, I'm trying to remember, parcel tax could be done in a special election. That's something that's not on the top of my mind. But if we're looking to put something on the November 2026 ballot and not pay for a special election, then it would be the same deadline in terms of the 88 days.
so there's not a primary in March or June?
There may be, but that wouldn't be a general election. So it would still be considered a special. We'd have to pay more, is my understanding, to put something on one of those ballots.
So I guess,
No, there will be,
Summarizing.
it
Go
will
ahead.
be a primary, because obviously the governor's seat is open and we're already seeing the action there.
Mhm.
So you might want to look at putting something on in the primary instead of the general. You're still going to have the days that you're talking about.
So it's June 2nd, 2026 is the
And you still
primary.
have the 88 days, you still have to do it. Plus,
okay.
I think realistically, your November of 2026 need is realistic. But what I'm hearing from you is you want the full, you've said this before, but I'm just gonna, you want the full timeline. You want what has to be done when. I mean, we know legally,
Yes.
as Catherine has said, it's the 88 days.
And because we're asking council to give you a sense of our priorities, I think what I'm hearing is
Yeah, we need.
we
Tony to-
need to have that timeline pressure tested by staff and come back and say, if you want flexibility to put these things on a general election, here is what needs to happen when. And looks like Tony's here.
Yes, it's also going to depend upon which revenue measures
That's-
you agree to.
Mhm.
If the charter amendment is one, we're going to need to start probably that process immediately after we pass the budget for 25-26, because there's going to be a lot of research, a lot of developments. I would imagine some type of committee that would need to be developed, a lot of research, and to determine just, I mean, yeah, the charter amendment that we're talking about, the property transfer tax, but there's a couple other items that could be addressed as well with the charter. We do the parcel tax, probably not as much leg time needed to develop that tax measure process. But yeah, it will depend on which revenue measures you're going to direct staff to follow. But I would not put anything on a ballot before November 2026.
Okay. So we need to work really closely. I'm hearing that these are super important,
Is a big
like
one. Yeah.
existential moments, and that we want to line it up to have the flexibility. So I would ask staff to get back to us on when we need to give you input on different items. We can't tonight, and we weren't supposed to. But I think if you come back with a timeline that enables us to give you that feedback so that there's not a big gap in the in your ability to start things in process for what we need to put in place for finances and ballot measures, that's a very high priority. So I can't say whether that's July or December. And my guess is it's somewhere in the middle. And it'll come in, but locking on the timelines that you need from us, and communicating that is super important. Just a couple of things on, Christian Co. Tony, how important is that in order to set us up for the ballot measures, the finalizing all of those items?
Yeah, right now, they've done most of the heavy lifting in regards to, getting us caught up with the audits.
Okay.
On our financial transactions. What they're working on now is policies, procedures, just more administrative stuff. So that could be December.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're
it's-
comfortable with that getting done this year? Okay, I'm glad to hear that. And the education of the public is an ongoing thing, so I don't know that we need to pick a date other than it has to be this year, that we have a continual,
Yes, we'll
effort.
be doing that throughout the budget process.
It's ongoing.
That's ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Regular financial reports, you're continuing to improve the financial reporting, so I mean, we don't need a deadline for that, I don't think. And then necessary infrastructure. I do think there is a little bit of a do loop here on what service level we, per Craig's point, want to be providing to the public. So that's one where that could be difficult to put in process, because I think we need information on what it would take to get to a certain point, but you need direction on, do we need eight hours a day at the front desk, or do we need PB Connect responses to be within 2 days? Like, I'm not quite sure, frankly, how to get that process refined. I don't know if you have any suggestions, but obviously that's going to feed into how much money we want to be raising. So do you have any thoughts on timing?
That's ongoing process.
Okay.
As we continue to develop the budget and as we go through the study sessions and getting the feedback during the town hall sessions. And just as we check in, as the budget is developed over the next 2 to 3 months, we should get a better understanding of what service levels we need and what the costs are going to be.
Yep.
So Corey, for the notes, if we could just say, we can't leave that for a year, for example, we need that to be factoring into what we're trying to raise revenue for. So I would say that's got to be by December, somewhere between July and December, that we have to make good progress on it. Maybe not have it perfect, but
Well, hopefully we'll have direct where we need to go with when the budget gets adopted.
okay.
Your 2 points are kind of in sync. One of is, what level of service do we want to have?
Yeah.
Tied to what level of service we can afford. You're asking both of those questions, and it starts with the budget process. And then,
And short-term and long-term, it might be a different acceptable answer this year versus 2 years' time.
but I think that's a reasonable thing to have
Okay,
this calendar year. Because then that also will inform what you want to do in terms of your revenue enhancement.
okay.
And
Mark,
so-
is that a sufficient level to get these refined and to come back for ratification?
Well, my notes just say, what level of service can we do? What timeline do we have for the, any kind of ballot measure?
Mhm.
We pretty much, the audits will be completed, which is key to the revenue measure. And if we don't have the audits completed, then forget it,
Right.
you know, in terms of the
Yeah, the
trust.
but-fors are,
So you have that,
Really
but,
important.
that's, pretty clear
okay,
to me anyway, that what level of service we want, which is tied into what we need to be self-sufficient. And you're looking at that, the budget will tell us what we can do now. And then following that will be, all right, this is what we'd like, this is our aspiration, we'd like to be. And that will help us figure out the the ballot measure.
And so to circle back to your original question, what does success look like? Success looks like being in a position to make choices on what to put on the ballot measure well in advance of impending deadlines and to give you feedback well in advance of that.
That's well stated.
Okay.
That's what success looks like to me.
Okay.
Um,
Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. The next one is safety. So I'm gonna start, I don't know, Helen, if you're comfortable going first or, okay.
And I was hoping to make one clarification about public comment.
Yes.
So we didn't include, there's an item for oral communications for items not on the agenda, which is item number 2 for this agenda. I understood that we're skipping that. It's not legally required for special meetings to have that, and we have that anyway
Thank you.
at the regular agenda. However, it is required to have public comment on the study session agenda. I don't know if there's anyone actually on Zoom, but I wanted to note that we do need to provide an opportunity. This meeting will likely be recessed and reconvened later, so that opportunity could be later. But I just wanted to note that in case anyone on Zoom isn't available later, you may want to invite them to speak.
So that I am happy to do that. The question is whether we hold it until Q2 or so and
Right.
get through the safety and then hear that. The other approach would be to multi-purpose the oral communications at the beginning of the regular agenda to let
I
people.
would
don't
not
have a
recommend
preference.
that because
Okay.
the regular agenda is actually a separate meeting, and so we
Fine.
need to have the comment on this meeting.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
my suggestion is to get started with the safety, and then cut it off at Q2 or so and let there be public comment. Go ahead.
Thanks. So, I wanted clarification, and this could take longer, about taking action on the evacuation plan, and implementing home hardening requirements, which might have been through the Woodside Fire Department. But, I wasn't aware of either of those. I mean, take action, like, I know that we have some sort of evacuation plan, but I wasn't clear on what that action is, and it says it's already completed for both of those. So I was concerned about those. I did share with Mark, I'm not sure it got out to the rest of the council. Our Portola Valley's Great Emergency Preparedness Committee has been working on, getting not just an evacuation plan in place, but an emergency operation plan. And they've started work with that and they're moving that along. So I want to, so the not started update on the emergency operation plan. Our emergency preparedness committee is working on that. It has just started though, very early. And so part of, I'm very worried about the evacuation plan, in conjunction with Alpine Road, as well as Portola Road. But I did want more information on that because that actually is a huge priority to me. And then the safety element, that is a state requirement and there are consequences if we don't get that done. So, so those were my two top, and the implementation of home hardening, I think Woodside Fire did pass that ordinance. So I think those 3 were my top 3.
So that the evacuation, home hardening,
No, I'm sorry,
sorry.
evacuation, safety element, actually, because that
Safety
is
element,
a state
okay.
requirement.
Mhm.
So it says it's, started, and then, home hardening.
Home hardening,
Right.
okay.
I also would add that again, and I did a colleague's memorandum on February 2nd, I think. I would like Firewise to be, implemented townwide. So, I think, it's great that the ranch has it. It's great that other parts of Westridge have it, but it doesn't help unless the whole town does it cohesively. So I'd like to see, from council direction on creating Firewise communities throughout town, particularly in the higher risk neighborhoods, starting prioritization with the higher risk neighborhoods, hayfields and such. So,
Maybe we can ask for clarification on the evacuation plan and home hardening, which are listed as completed here.
right, so I was,
I could speak
Yeah,
to,
please.
so
Great.
taking action, in the evacuation plan was we accepted the plan that came from EPC. So that was the action. It wasn't implement an evacuation plan or an evacuation
Did
route. It was
something.
just, we accepted the evacuation plan. And so that's why it's completed. Okay. And then the home hardening that's basically putting into the building code the appropriate home hardening as is needed right now.
And it's been done.
And I believe that we've done the first, I mean, Woodside Fire is working and eventually they'll come out with some ordinance on home hardening, but right now it's vegetation management. That's the current thing we're working on. So they want to kind of get through that. So this has got pretty good echo right now. Do you-
yeah, that's,
Oh, okay. Great. There. See, now we got good. So thank you. So yeah, we've implemented 7A. So, and we've done that across the entire town. So we're basically above the minimum requirements. So I think that's great. And the town's been good about that. And I think Woodside Fire's been good about that. And then after they get some traction on vegetation management, then I think home hardening is the next thing to start putting in screen vents and things like that.
so, I mean, that's great for new construction, right? The home hardening, because you need a permit, sometimes. Sometimes people pull them, sometimes they don't. Someone told me this week, for instance, because of our permitting situation, that she was putting in a wooden deck, right? With no permit, because she needed to. So I was like, oh God.
So that's illegal. 'cause-
I know,
yeah,
I
okay.
know, I told her that. So, but what I'm concerned about is for people who aren't pulling these permits, right? And that's why I would like a Firewise community consideration. Because that really helps people to harden, to close vents, to let them know that their 20-year-old wooden deck, to reconsider that, that kind of thing. So it's
Sure,
a
it's
different than
education.
just the permit route.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So 7A, that's the implemented part of home hardening.
Great.
Firewise is going to be a little more complicated because it's not really a jurisdictional thing. It's individual volunteer organizations, the communities make that decision. Not because it doesn't belong even under Woodside Fire Protection District. So I think we can figure out how to work through that. But is that an end of the year?
Well, just to clarify
Yep.
what the ask is, because we're trying to
Right.
give direction to staff. What I'm hearing the direction is you would like a discussion of Firewise in a broader sense for the community. So the town council the ask is the town council would agendize a discussion.
Right, as well as, but also put it as a priority because I think it's important to help the community as well as direct, I'm not the liaison to wildfire safety preparedness, but to ask them to help encourage and find those core people within the different neighborhoods around town, whether it's by Willowbrook and Hayfield, find the people to help and support them, the wildfire preparedness committee.
So you would put that by the end of the year priority, because we are trying to give them.
Right, so
Feedback.
today's, within a year is what I would like.
Okay, so as we go through, if others can comment on whether they agree that should be, to do that, put it on the priority, amend the priority, and if so, what timeframe? Anything else on those?
Nope, that's
Okay.
all, thank you.
So Rebecca, you may or may not want to go next because you might be getting oriented. So maybe we'll go Mary, Craig, and then back to you. If that's okay.
Okay, so
Mike,
safety.
Mike.
I thought we've done a pretty good job on this. I would say, I think we have gotten started on a number of these things, and including, I thought that enhancing community understanding of crime statistics and related town activity maybe doesn't even need to be on this, that we could just do it with a simple town message. Uh, I thought from the point of view of the operations center that we were doing a really good job on it, but that we needed to complete it. With it, I thought I would added another date, which is 12/31/2026. And I thought a number of these things we could push out to 2026 if we were strapped for money. Um,
That's kind of the default if you
Okay.
don't prioritize it for this year.
Okay,
So we're trying not to, like, nothing should come off of this right now because we're going to have a reassessment of all priorities within a year. But we do want to give staff direction on what to focus on
Okay.
in the near future.
so conduct assessment of the Emergency Operations Center. I thought that needed to be started right away and needs to be completed by 6/31/2025, just so that the right hand and the left hand know what they're doing before the fire season starts, so that we know who to call and who to look to. So that was, was my main thing there for priorities. Otherwise, I went back to my comments before, which were about uh, PV Connect, which is that people are identifying right now trees on town-owned property that should be taken down before the fire season, and they're putting them on PV Connect. And we need to have responses to those, or people will be highly suspicious. So I put that on the 6/31/2025.
Okay, so you'd prioritize trying to get PV Connect inquiries around safety
Yeah.
addressed
Yeah.
or figured out.
And
Okay.
as far as Firewise, I think just starting it is the key. And putting a date. Okay, I'll put it for 12/31/2025.
Okay. Fred?
So completing the safety element, I thought that needed to be done by the end of the year, unless there's some state requirement that needs to be done sooner. Assessing the EOC, I think I would say end of the year. I would say updating the emergency operation plan by July. EPC has started work on both of those, but the EOP comes first. And then once you figure out the EOP, then you can
Okay.
kind of go into how the EOC works. Commissioner, I think that's been working fine. Augmenting public services. So again, to me, I put July on this because I think it's, if we're going to have to raise revenue for it, we need to think about that. So I mean, is this doing something like Woodside? And I mean, I wasn't quite sure what this was, but my recollection was it was things like, are we going to provide money to homeowners that clear property like Woodside does? They've got a $2,000 grant or something. So if we're going to do that, I think we need to look at whether we're going to do it by July. And then once we've made that decision, then we can decide to go from there. I'm up for having the safety meetings whenever. We used to do the fifth Wednesdays. That was kind of the way of spreading them out through the year. I'd be okay with starting that immediately, but I'm open to staff talking about how much time that takes. So I'm open to that. Let's see. So crime statistics, I'm with Mary. I think that's working well. I think having the police commissioner report back on that on a regular basis is fine. I would limit the amount of staff time we put into that.
No staff time.
Yeah, and potentially no staff time. And then Firewise, I mean, WPC is already encouraging Firewise communities and is following up, and also WPV Ready, which we fund indirectly through Epic, is also working directly on Firewise stuff. So we're actually making good progress there.
So would you want it to remain at the WPC, but encourage them to make progress this year as opposed to prioritize it
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like we're at the council level and at the town, I think we have bigger things we need to deal with, and we have two organizations that are already working this. So I think we want to give it our blessing, but I don't think I put time and energy, like this is, are we directing Mark and staff to go put time and effort into it? I would say no.
Okay. Rebecca, we're going to have to go to public comment in a minute, but we're trying to just get high-level comments on the safety. One, we can only have about 3 to 5 true priorities, but giving Mark and staff guidance on mid-year, end of year, or if you say nothing, it'll just be whenever it's practical. And then any high-level comments, we're just offering those up.
So for safety, so my feeling about safety is that there's a lot of groups in and around town that are working on safety initiatives across the board. And the biggest issue I see is that nobody's coordinating them. So, one of the, I submitted a colleague's memo that hasn't shown up, but the key point of it was that I feel that the town needs to create a multidisciplinary safety task force made up of members or representatives from all the safety committees, some of the other committees, along with staff and some of the emergency personnel to work on essentially the safety element, which really should be our comprehensive safety framework and project plan. And that safety task force would be responsible for many of the things that we have here under safety. And key among them would be the coordination, the management, the prioritization, determining where, who should be responsible for various things, and how the staff fits into that. So we all know that we're short-staffed, and it's difficult to heap more on the staff. So to me, if we consolidate it into a safety task force that has all of our, key people throughout the town managing the process, then the staff can participate in that as well. And they can give us guidance on what the priorities should be, what time it will take to do some of these things. So that's where I'm feeling in terms of the safety element. That would be part of that. That would essentially be this task force mandate is to complete that safety element. I would want the task force completed be put in place by June. And then the safety element itself, sort of the guiding document of this task force and for our town, should be completed by the end of the year. That would be my thing. And then, as part of the task force job would be to establish priorities for everything else. And so when we talk about reestablishing regular town council safety meetings, I don't exactly know what those are, but to me, if you create the safety task force, then that would meet on a monthly basis, and then you would be able to have those updates out to the community. Let's see what else is on here. Emergency operations plan and emergency operations center, that would be part of the task force to coordinate who would be working on that, and essentially would be assigning that to the EPC, as well as coordinating that with the county's emergency department. Enhancing crime statistics, I don't consider that important because they're already enhancing the community information about them. We're already doing that. The sheriff comes on a regular basis and provides that. So at most, we would hand that off to the weekly or the monthly newsletter that goes out. Just when we get them updated from the sheriff, we update the town. That's a very low priority for me. The Firewise, again, it's being coordinated with Woodside Fire and Epic. Again, that would be one of the priorities that would fall under the task force to determine the actual priority of that. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Okay.
Can I speak to this
Yes, I
real
have
quick?
to, we either can finish up this, but we have to take public comment
But
within.
but we
the
don't,
session.
no, well, we need to take public comment within this meeting. We can do it after we have the main meeting.
That was not the recommendation.
No,
We
No,
should
no,
do
no,
it.
no,
right-
wait, here,
No.
no, she did, so what our attorney said was it has to be part of this meeting and it can be now, or it can be after the next meeting. It just can't be part
Clarif-
of the next meeting.
Please clarify.
Yes, it has to be part of this meeting. This was noticed as a special meeting separate and apart from the regular agenda. I think that is, that is correct. It could be later. My recommendation, however, was to do it before 7, just
Right.
because
People's
there are
time.
folks on Zoom who may or may not be able to stay later.
So I don't mind coming back to this, but I did want to figure out whether we're going to be able to wrap this topic or reopen that topic. Either is fine with me.
So why don't we take public comment and then I'd like to speak to this disaster task force. And I
Okay,
can do it
so we'll
afterwards
reopen.
or when it gets reopened. Yeah.
On safety. I still have to comment and you have,
Yeah,
anybody
perfect.
can have further comments. Okay, so I'll open this up to public comment. There is nobody with their hand up in the schoolhouse, so I will go to Dave Cardinal online.
Thanks. Yeah, a quick comment. First of all, full disclosure, I'm a huge supporter of our town maintenance staff. And I think they get a bad undeserved rap sometimes about this whole not responsive. So I went and looked at every incident in PV Connect, and there are only two out of many that have anything to do with trees. One is eucalyptus that somebody's afraid will fall, and the other is a tree that fell across a trail on Westridge, near Westridge. And the actual comment says, please contact Westridge Architectural Commission or whatever they call themselves for it. And other than that, there are 0 down trees anywhere that have been reported. So, I don't know why this keeps coming up. I think a lot of people, I don't know, but I think our town staff does an amazing job with PV Connect and they handle these things expeditiously. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. The next hand up is Rita Gomez.
Hi, I would just like to touch on 2 items. I know you're short for time and appreciate this meeting. But I just want to say that with PV Connect, there are many people that feel uncomfortable because their name is there and maybe they can't talk to their neighbor. And so if there's a way to make it a little more anonymous or on the back end, the staff gets to see the name, but not everyone else, that would be helpful. And as far as the crime reports from the sheriff's department, many times they are not at the meeting. They are not present at the meeting, and those reports are not then distributed to the public, which would be helpful, even if they're required to then distribute those reports to the public, so the public can at least look at them if the meeting's canceled or if they just don't show up. That would be really helpful, but really appreciate you guys taking the time to prioritize, and it looks like it's prioritizing with some action and motion, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands raised in the schoolhouse or online. I think we can take a short break before recommencing the regular meeting at 7. And just for the public, we're going to continue. We're going to take a recess from the special session and reconvene it after our regular meeting.
I just wanted the council to know that the colleague memos that were referred to by Rebecca, Councilmember Flynn, Councilmember Walter, are scheduled on the agenda for April 9th.
Okay, great. All right, we'll take a short break. Okay. Bringing the regular meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Flynn,
Present.
Councilmember Hefty,
Here,
Councilmember Walter,
Awesome.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Present.
Mayor Haskell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So we're going to start with the town manager report.
Let me get with it here. Yes, so you're gonna hear about the farmer's market in just a second. That'll be part of my report.
Mhm.
But I wanted to get a couple other things out quickly. You've seen some of the publicity on this. We're having coffee with the mayor on the 31st, which is Monday, 31st of March, 3:30 to 4:30 at Community Hall. There will also be the first council study session on the budget, which will be about revenues. That'll be the exclusive part of that. That'll be on the 31st from 5 to 7, and that'll be in here because it'll be recorded. And now I'm going to turn it over to Niall on the farmer's market report. And I do want to say that I've done my shopping there a couple of times and I've gotten my golden beets and other vegetables. So it's been fun visiting and I'm anxious to hear what Niall has to say.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys all taking the time to listen to our little presentation we have today. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so my name is Niall Estep. My company is Good Roots Farmers Markets and Events, and we've gratefully been working with Portola Valley since 2018. So we've been through some various different ways of the market. We changed to the safe mobile market during COVID, and so had an experience there, but always trying to offer healthy local produce and food essentials to Portola Valley community, who have been awesome to work with. So we're very, very appreciative and fortunate for that. Also at Good Roots, just so you have a little background if I haven't met you before, but we manage farmers markets as well as community festivals and cultural celebrations. So you can see here, we manage the Carmel by the Sea Farmers Market, where we do third Thursdays, where it's a full community outing. And we have local nonprofits and various agencies, city agencies coming out, and some of the farmers market vendors stay. So a little similar to the summer concert series that you guys all have. So we have a variety of offerings there. And then we do cultural celebrations as well. So kind of always like to spice up kind of the offerings that we have. And so yeah, some of our goals for this year is to expand the community connections. So we're going to be having an information booth and with some children activities. So we're going to get these cool little Portola Valley coloring sheets where the kids can come with crayons and colored pencils. We want to kind of roll that out into the spring and summer as the weather kind of warms up. We also want to work with local artists to have reusable bags. You know, we're always minimizing our uses of plastic and things like that where we don't allow the market. And we just want to build our social media awareness as well. Obviously, that's a great way to kind of specifically target the Portola Valley community. And one other thing that we're looking to do is get an approval. I'm not sure who this would be through, but to expand our signage onto Portola and Alpine Road, just some A-frame signs that will be put up a couple hours before the market and picked up after the market, just so that people know that we are there. And so another couple of our goals are to expand our farmers market recruitment. And so we would love to, right now we're at an average of about 15 farmers market vendors, and we'd love to grow that to about 25 vendors for our peak summer. And so we're good on a goal there. It's obviously spring, and so we're starting to see a lot of the farmers who are growing a variety of specialty crops who will be joining us soon. But we do have some farmers that go through us with the winter, like Jose Gallardo, who's been there for many years now. So yeah, and we always work with other farmers market associations and our vendors to expand and get the word out to just really grow the market. And I think it's a great market as is, but we want to really expand the offerings to the community. And another awesome update that we have is we do have a new market manager coming in. Her name is Soleil. She's been with one of the favorite vendors that we have, Little Sky Bakery, for a couple years. So she's very familiar with the community as well as how the vendor relationship works. And so we're definitely excited about her being a part of our team and helping manage the market with all that good stuff that we're going to be adding. Is there any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate the farmers market, and it's good to see the expectations for expansion. Any questions from the council? Helen, go ahead.
Thanks. I love our farmers market, so I really appreciate it. I'd love for you guys to offer market money, the statewide program, right?
Yep.
It's been unfortunate, but I know it's tricky to get. And I know the
Yeah.
funding sometimes is awkward, but I would really love to see that. So I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do definitely have a EBT CalFresh and for the senior community. So we will get that activated definitely as soon as possible. We haven't had a ton of it in the past because we used to offer it a couple of years ago, but when COVID kind of came and things changed, we didn't renew it, but it's something we'll definitely have in the next, I'd like to say 3 months, we'll get that up and going.
And I hope that there's signage and marketing about that for options for people that, to provide fresh fruit and vegetables. And then it helps the farmers as well because they sell
Yeah.
more, right? So thank you.
Totally. Yeah, there's a great program that they do that's also Market Match where it doubles the funding, and so I'm hopeful that funding will continue. But yeah, we will definitely look to expand that in the near future.
Right. Market Match is amazing. So I would love that here. Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah.
comments? Go ahead.
Oh, hi, I just was curious what the actual stall fee is.
Yeah, so we waive we will depending on the weather, but typically it's $40 is the typical stall fee. But if it's a rain day, we'll drop it to 25. A lot of other stall fees in surrounding area can get up to $80 to $100. So we are definitely on the lower end.
Thank you.
Mary?
Just in terms of our limited maintenance staff, I wondered how the cleanup goes and how you feel that's working with the town.
Yeah, no, we try and let all of our vendors know that they need to take all their garbage off site, and then we do a sweep through of our market managers at the end. But that is one of the rules in our rules and agreements is that the vendors take their garbage out, and so we can't always keep an eye on all the 20 vendors, but they definitely know that that is a rule, and we will continue to make sure that it's followed.
Right. Thank you.
Craig?
No particular comments other than I appreciate you guys working on the market and trying to make it more viable. So, an increase in vendors would be awesome.
Thank you so much.
And my only question is, you mentioned the need for signage. I do recall we used to have signage. Has that not been happening?
We have some signage on the ends of the kind of entryway, but we don't have it put it out actually on the road.
Okay.
So that's something we'll look to restart this year.
And that was something that the town did to support the farmer's market.
Yeah,
Is that
we
what you're
used
looking
to
for?
store it in the schoolhouse.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do appreciate everything that you do. I mean, it's a vibrant area. It's obviously more participants in the summer, so I support your ambitions for growth. Go ahead. One more.
Yep, one more question. Are the hours, 3 to 6? I know many times like San Carlos and Los Altos that they're open until 7 and 8.
Yeah.
Is that something that would ever happen to stay open later?
If we start to get larger crowds and more kind of a couple food truck more options, then I think that could be viable. But I think at this point we don't have a big enough because Portola is kind of a unique situation where you have like San Carlos and the population just much larger. So to have the vendors stay out that much longer, we just need the sales to be able to make sense for them. So I would say, if we continue to get more vendors and we get more of a flow of foot traffic, then that's definitely something we can consider in the future.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you so much.
All right, take care. Mark, do you have anything else for the manager's report? Okay. So then we are going to move on to oral communications. So this would include items that are not on the agenda, as well as any comments on the town manager report. I do have a card here from JP Gopal. Is this something not on the agenda that you were speaking? Okay, go ahead, please.
Everybody's really excited
Okay.
about this. It is a beautiful sight.
Yeah,
Basically, after 4 years and coming 2 weeks ago with a new mayor and new town council members, I brought up our big worry of all the neighbors on Alpine and up Golden Oak with this parking at the bottom of this hill being a fire hazard, danger hazard, crossing the street hazard, and especially Alpine Inn having to put an employee there 4 days a week to sit there so nobody parks there. So the last 2 weeks, this sign originally was approved by the committee on an orange cone, like I mentioned to you. And I said how ugly this looks, and it has nothing to do with the way our neighborhood looks. 3 days later, this sign was posted on the fence that actually belongs to the neighbor. It's a heirloom fence. It's it's there forever, and the neighbors fix it, and it's a beautiful fence. And this sign appeared there. We've never had one car there. Only one car did show up, and the police came and they ticketed them. And Linda and everybody at Alpine Inn are extremely happy with this collaboration. Now, the second thing I had brought up last week, and you, Mary Huffy, remind me what I said that was so important, and that you went like this. For 4 years, we've been asking to fix the emergency road.
Yeah, that was.
Right, at the end of the parking lot, because if there's a fire, everybody burns. So I don't think I should have to come here every Wednesday. I think we have to figure out with the assistant town manager and everybody else who's here, how can we, Lori Hunter is willing to pay for it, the Alpine restaurant is willing to pay for it. We just need to pave it, have a gate with keys, so they have keys, the fire people have keys. So if there's a fire, cars can get in and out. Otherwise, everything burns. There's no way to get out. There's only one entrance and one exit. So this has to be put on some type of agenda and taken care of. Thank you.
thank you. We can't comment on it, but thank you. We'll.
You were astounded last week when I said it,
That's more than I should.
but I don't think I should have to come
Okay.
here every other
Yeah.
Wednesday or this and that. This is something that's so simple to fix because the town has nothing to pay. Pine Inn's willing to pay, and everybody gets a key and everybody's safe. And the fire marshal made a report on this.
So the fire marshal is right there. You might want to go talk to her.
Not during the meeting, please. Okay? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jean-Paul. Next, I don't see any other hands in the schoolhouse. And we have one number ending in 8783. Go ahead, please. You're on mute. Okay.
Hello,
looks
can
like
you hear
you're
me?
off mute. Yes, we can.
Hi there. This is Sharif Etman, your former town manager, and I just wanted to call in and take a moment to celebrate the life of Sue Crane. The world lost a beautiful spirit on March 14th, as you know, and Sue was a staple of the Portola Valley community for decades. I had the pleasure of meeting with her on multiple occasions, and she instantly touched my heart. Her expertise and kind soul helped me tremendously during my time with Portola Valley. Her incredible passion, energy, and memory are what impressed me the most. She was all about family and talked about them often. Sue supported me both professionally and personally during my time with Portola Valley. She had a spark that kept me going on tough days. I stayed in touch with Sue afterwards, and we talked often, where I tried to check in with her after her fall. People come into your life for a reason, and I was honored to have crossed paths with Sue Crane. I could honestly call her my friend. I hope we can take a moment tonight to pause and honor Sue Crane's life and her legacy. Portola Valley was a better place because of her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appropriate comments and well appreciated. Thank you. We're going to have a few more remarks at the end of our meeting, of a similar nature. So, don't want to move on from that, but we want to recircle back to that later. Next is Christy C.
Thank you. I was just wondering from the manager's report, what our financial donation is for the farmer's market. I don't think I heard that in the presentation, so I think it was in the $5,000 range, but maybe you could clarify. And my second question after the planning commission meeting last week is I'm a little confused on the terminology Dorothy Ford Park, because we used to call it Ford Field and Dorothy Ford Park and the parking lot. So it was a little, I don't think the residents understood that the proposal for Dorothy Ford Park upzoning to 7+ acres included the Little League field and the parking lot for the Little League field. So I think in the future, this terminology needs to be clarified and thoroughly included so residents know whether to attend a meeting that involves upzoning the Little League field and the parking in addition to the 2.48 acres. My second question regarding last week's meeting is the deed paid off, or do we still have a deed on Ford Field? And I mean the Little League field. So if you could make these more clear in the future for the residents and help us understand what the planning commission will be voting on. I don't think we had the attendance that we needed. We have 600 students playing at the field on an annual basis. Our community has revolved around that field, and I was surprised to see that proposed. And I'm wondering how this town council feels about zoning above what is asked for. So I'd love to hear some feedback in the future and more detailed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christy. And I will be addressing in a subcommittee report some aspects of the planning commission, but we won't have the answers to all of that tonight. All right, I don't see any other hands up on Zoom and none in the public. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I want to ask if any members of the council want to pull any of the consent agenda items. Catherine, should we take public comment first, or should we ask about pulling?
It's funny, I think we've alternated the way we
Yes,
do that.
exactly.
I generally recommend take public comment first, because sometimes
Okay.
the public comment actually informs whether
Let's
you want
do
to
that.
pull or not.
That makes sense. Okay, so asking if there's any public comment on the consent agenda items 5A through E. I see no hands in the schoolhouse. I actually see none online. So coming back, do any council members have a proposal to pull any of those items?
5A, the minutes.
5A, okay, anyone else? No, okay, so can I have a motion to approve 5B through E?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Flynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Hefty,
Aye.
Councilmember Walter,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Aye.
Mayor Haskell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Given we're all here in present? Can't we just do this as a voice?
You could do it all in favor, yes, for consent.
Yeah.
calendar.
So go ahead on 5A, what? would you like
So
to
for
know?
the 6A, the discussion of the ad hoc site selection committee or site evaluation committee, I think we should actually include the list of the 4 parcels. So it would say, under 6A, it would say Village Square, 884 Portola Road, Fogarty Winery parcel, 19501 Skyline Boulevard, Christchurch, 815 Portola Road, and Hawthorne Historic Complex near 800 Los Trancos Road.
So it's item 5A on our agenda, and within those minutes on item 6A, you would want to list those 4 parcels specifically. Anyone have any comments on that?
I just would second that. I agree.
All right, any other discussion or comment?
I mean, not only that, is you could put a link to the to their document as well.
That
But
would
I
be
mean,
good.
that's in the previous, because that has all that information in it, so. I'm happy to do either or both.
Okay,
I'm for both.
we would put both in, all right. Right, so then, I should take public comment on this, or we did already? We were
You
not.
did already.
All right, so, the proposal, can I have a motion?
I make a motion to add the actual list of the 4 parcels that are going to be continued to be explored, as well as a link to the presentation
Okay.
in the
Second.
minutes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. I have to go back up. All right, so we are moving on to the regular agenda, and we're happy to receive a presentation from the Woodside Fire Protection District on the state fire map. So I'm going to ask the fire marshal to make her presentation. I don't know if you need any deduction capabilities. Okay, thank you.
Not much more of a presentation, more of just informing everybody. But good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me this evening. I had asked to be a part of your meeting tonight because I wanted to let everybody know a little bit more information about the LRA maps. On February 24th of this year, the state provided us the map for the LRA. And it's been a long-awaited map that everyone's been anxiously waiting for a long time. We did our best to put out information to the public. We put an article in the Almanac. We pushed out information through social media, town newsletters, our own newsletter, our website. And so we wanted to make sure we communicate as much as we could. We also prepared a website dedicated to the maps and the fire hazard severity zones so that residents could educate themselves with what the maps really were and how they're created and the methodology and science behind it that CAL FIRE used. And we provided multiple videos and just resources, even information for insurances on how these maps are used, the importance of understanding that these are hazard maps, not risk maps. So you did see a change in the maps from what you were used to seeing. There was reduction throughout the district, and there wasn't really any areas that increased, but the maps are how they are. So today, I just wanted to announce that last night we did complete the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the maps. And we have it open for a 30-day comment period. We have instructions on our website on how to submit comments if you are interested in providing any kind of feedback and comments. On there is also the schedule and our requirements by law on the process. So law required us from the day the maps were released to us, we have 120 days to write an ordinance and adopt it. So we have been very proactive on getting that process completed, which is why we did the first reading yesterday, the 30-day comment period, and we are set for April 29th to do the second reading and adoption. We are not making any changes to the map. we have been given by law, we can make modifications to increase, we cannot decrease anything. So they are what they are. And in the interest of the entire district, it was much more attainable because we are the ones who are providing fire protection to the entire district, that it was easier for us to go ahead and complete the process, adopt it, and submit it to the state once completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really important to be kept apprised of this. Any questions by the council for the motion? Go ahead, Rebecca, we'll start with you.
It was kind of striking that that certain areas that I would have considered higher hazard weren't considered by the state. Some of our ravines, for example, significantly high hazard, very high hazard in some cases. But it has no impact on us because we already have a home hardening and we have 7A applicable to everybody. But my question is, for those areas that are now moderate, that clearly don't fall into what would be really high hazard, it seems that maybe the fuel mitigation ordinance may be a bit of overkill. And I'm concerned a little bit about habitat protection. If people start removing tons of bushes and kind of clearing their properties, which I'm seeing happening around town. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be a little bit more flexibility in terms of when you inspect and not demand that people remove.
We've already had a lot of flexibility. If you read our ordinance protects habitats. There is no requirement. There's nothing that allows us to remove healthy living trees. There's nothing in the ordinance that requires the removal of any vegetation or any type of habitats, or even during bird nesting times. There are specific requirements within it. The main thing the fuel mitigation ordinance does is it establishes the requirements for defensible space as provided by research. And now we have more research to even support, given the LA fires that have already occurred and the lessons learned that have come from that, the importance of the zone 0, that ember resistant zone, which is 0 to 5 feet, and how houses were able to survive the magnitude of the fire that happened in LA, the multiple of them, and how small things, because of defensible space and the home hardening, protecting those vulnerabilities, were essential for people to be able to return to their homes that were still intact. So there will be no flexibility in the ordinance. The ordinance will still stand and be enforced as such. There's no reason to change it at all because everything supports the need for it. And we want to make sure that if there's ever a wildfire that comes through, that is the understanding for people to really understand that regardless of what these maps say in hazard, as you say, you can see all the dangers in our district. We are in fact still at risk. It hasn't changed our level of risk. And we already, as I try to educate people, there are no boundaries with fires. The fires don't care what zone you're in. They don't care where you are. They'll just keep burning. As long as they keep finding fuel, it'll just keep burning. Thankfully, we don't live in an area where the winds are as bad as where the South and the LA fires. That was a very wind-driven fire. Thankfully, we don't have that, but what we do have is a lot of density and fuel in our district. So this is just one way, an avenue that we are going to continue as we move forward with protecting the district and making sure that we provide the highest levels of fire safety and fire regulations within a district.
Okay, I also had a couple questions. There's a couple areas that are listed as gray, that show up as gray, Ladera and off of Corte Madera Road. Any idea of what the problem is with those?
That's come up a lot and we haven't heard response back from the state. There is a workshop in April that is being held by actually the fire chiefs of San Bruno. He is doing a town meeting where he's invited people from CAL FIRE to discuss the maps. That's one of the questions that we're trying to understand. What happened? Does that mean anything? What does that mean? Why that happened? So we don't have those answers as far as why those areas are gray. The one thing that we are certain for is, again, as we've said, the maps won't change our ordinance. So even if they're in the gray or wherever they are, those requirements will still stand.
And then when you blow out the maps to try to kind of see your property and you look at the edge, it's really kind of random how it cuts. So I don't know how people whose properties fall on that edge, you know, is there something that they're gonna have to, you know, do differently or something? It's kind of,
Again, just how they design the maps, I don't have an answer to that. That's also something that has been a lot of questions that all jurisdictions in the state of California have received from the public and still waiting to get clarity on what that means. But as far as what it means for us, I can tell you that if any parcel, because of those jagged lines, we already have an understanding with CAL FIRE in the SRA, whether you're LRA or SRA in our fire district, anything that's within our district boundary lines, we provide that fire protection and we will continue with those home assessments because we have an ordinance in place. CAL FIRE we have the agreement with them that we will continue to do those home assessments only because we have measures in place and they're fine with supporting that.
and then my final question is it possible on your website, on your left-hand menu, you have the fire hazard severity zone tab, and then right under it, you have fire hazard severity zone viewer. That one actually takes you to the state responsibility viewer. So it's the SRA, it's not the, yeah, no. So it would be great if you could get the local one there. I think.
there. That's strange how yours looks if you click here.
Yeah,
That's just the
if I
viewer.
go there, yes, they're
Keep
both,
going.
yeah, they're both
Yes,
there.
I'll look at that. Thank you.
But yeah, it would be great if you could
Yeah,
switch
'cause
it to
ours
here,
is right
this
here,
one,
yeah.
yeah, so, but that link doesn't take you
Yeah,
to
I'll
the
take a
right.
look at that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mary?
We've been, how can we support you to get more of our community into Firewise?
Well, that's a separate topic, but it would be helpful. I mean, it's really just incentivizing people. We have seen that insurance companies within their listing of how they will provide maybe credits or keep you as a insurer or provide discounts. When they give you a list of all the different things, some insurance companies, they are listing Firewise. So being a part of a Firewise community, it's more of incentivizing your residents on the importance of what that would do for them, not just insurance wise, but a community effort on establishing defensible space. I will say that we are now up to 13 communities within the fire district that are all Firewise now. So that's a huge number just in the last couple years since I've been here. When I started, there was only about 4 and now we're up to 13. So that's a tremendous amount in 2 years. There's multiple applications right now being reviewed. The state is extremely overwhelmed. Our last community, which was Woodside West, that just became a Firewise community, took them 10 months to get through the process because of how overly taxed the state is on reviewing these applications. So it is a process.
How would you break that down for Portola Valley?
I can get that for you and send it off to Mark. I can share that information with Mark for you.
Because that could be something we could say, well, we're,
We have this many in
85,
Portola
we're
Valley,
almost
sure.
the best in
Yes, I would be
in
happy
the
to do that.
district.
We're also working on creating a map for our Firewise page that would show as a district all the areas of all the communities so that people can have a visual as well. So we're working on that. Thank you.
Craig?
This process, are we just asking questions, then you're going to take public comment, then you're going to make final comments?
Correct.
And I have no questions.
So thanks for what you're doing. You know, the maps it's nice to get the new maps, and I don't mean to I know they are not approved, but I am curious how long they are expected to last until there are new maps. I know horse before the cart, but just curious.
The law requires 5 years, and we saw what happened for this last go around. Although I will say that CAL FIRE is aware, and I think given the fire since 2017 and how much it's ramped up in the state, I think they are putting in much more effort in keeping up with it now. And they've hired a lot more staff and to be able to keep up with that demand. So I think we're going to see more of a routine every 5 or 6 years.
Great. Okay. Next question. I appreciate what my colleague asked about Firewise. And we are talking about how we can potentially coordinate, how, I mean, the wildfire committee coordinate about Firewise. I also would love, I didn't put this on the priority, but I would love for Woodside Fire to help coordinate a group to get goats in town to help with vegetation management.
So interesting you brought that up. It's one of the things I was looking at when I first started here because I thought, why don't we have goats? At the last conference I was just at for the state where all the fire prevention officers came together, there was a lot of talk on goats. And actually, there are a lot of people who specialize in doing all the type of vegetation and fuel mitigation, all that. And they actually recommended sheep over goats because goats, they actually can disturb a lot more of the land with their hoofs, they were saying, and because of what they're taking in and eating and what they're pooping. So they said that sheeps were a better direction to go. So anyway, still something to look at to see what we can do for the district.
Right. I've got 2 companies that I can give you the contacts. I haven't used either one. But you know, one of them has a minimum of 10 acres and one of them has a minimum of 20 acres. So I would love, you know, what they are goats. I think one of them actually has sheep in her herd as well. I'm not
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah,
That would
so
be
I'm
great.
happy to
Thanks,
share.
Helen.
Okay. Other comment while I've got you, I know this is not, can you speak while you're here? It's about the Chipper Day and about people needing reservations.
Absolutely, sure. So it is a transition that we're going through this year. We know it is going to be a transition for a lot of people. So we don't expect 100% that, you know, oh, if they don't have a reservation, we are not going to pick up their pile. That's not the intention at all. We just want people to start getting accustomed and seeing that this is the direction we are going to be going. And for next year, we do want to see this. And these are the main reasons why. We've changed our system mainly because we've actually seen how it's worked in other jurisdictions that have a chipper program, and it works much more efficiently by doing that. And here's the reasons. The first reason is because we know ahead of time how many people have, so the dates haven't changed. Let me back up. Everyone's dates have not changed. It's the same as what it's been all the time. So you already know kind of in your neighborhood, you know, first week of June or end of June or whatever your dates usually are, the dates haven't changed, just the process. So when people do make the reservation, it allows us to, one, know how many people are participating so that when our fuel mitigation crews are mapping out their route, they know which way they're going to be driving and mapping out, because they usually come in on Sundays on their day off out of their free time to look and scout what is out there because they have no idea what's out there. So that's not an efficient use of their time. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it allows us to really get accurate data on how many people are participating, how much we're chipping, how much material we are getting rid of in our district. So it gives us more statistics and data, and we can pull reports from that. The other thing is the amount of time it takes for staff to do all the data entry for all the program with all the residents in our district. When we do a breakdown of workloads on how much people get paid to do certain things and the amount of time it takes them to do, we're spending more money because it's just us. We don't have assistants and secretaries and all that. So my inspectors, my fuel mitigation guys who are trying to be out there doing right-of-way work and work in our district, they're spending hours just doing data entry. So it just helped for in all to be able to improve how we do things and where we're dedicating our time and our manpower than just data entry. So that's where we're asking residents for their help to improve our program and that efficiency.
And I'm sorry, for people that don't know, is it only a reservation system this round, or is the truck going around on the same dates as
So
last
it's
year?
it's the reservation, but when they're out there and they're picking up piles, they're obviously going to see people who didn't pick up, because right now what it'll do when they do pick up for that address who's already has a reservation, they can put exactly, oh, we picked up from so-and-so this amount. And on a side note, just so you're all aware, there is a Ready, Set, Go program that is put on, that's actually through the whole United States. And we just received an award for, our guys are so diligent of trying to put in as much information, but how much fuel, we got rid of in our district, 2,008 hours of time this past year, the fuel mitigation crew spent in clearing away vegetation and doing our right-of-ways and chipping. And we received a certificate of award for that accomplishment of being one of the highest in the country. So we are really proud of getting that recognition. But this is, again, one of those ways for us to be able to track all that information accurately so that we can keep submitting.
Great, thank you.
I don't have any questions at this point. You have a question? Go ahead.
Just since we got into Jim, is there a way for residents to know whether they're on the list? Because I mean, one thing is, it seems like you sign up and then maybe you signed up and then it's chippings 3 months later. So, I mean, it's.
So a couple
can-
of
Can they
things.
look it up?
Yeah, so they can, as soon as they do their registration, so their reservation, their name, their email, you can opt in for a text message if you want. If you don't opt in, you still get an email that tells you about your chipping day. And then 30 days before your actual chipping day, it'll like send you another reminder of saying, hey, your chipping day is coming up. We are asking that it not be put out more than a week in advance because we don't want to increase our fuel loads and our evacuation routes and how people would get out if there was a fire. So 1 week in advance. So usually, do it the weekend before putting it out on the street of your week of your pickup. But you will get notifications and you'll even get one 7 days prior.
Yeah, I think I was trying to ask a slightly different question, but you answered a good part of it as well, which is, how do I know whether I'm on the list or not?
That is how, so that's how you know, is
But-
once you make your
No,
reservation,
no, but I'm
it's on
saying, how
there.
do I know whether I made the I mean, so what you're saying is if you don't get any email within 7 days of the time, then you're not on the list. Is that?
That's a good question. How do you know is if you went through the process of doing it and you get your you get an email that says, thank you for signing up. And you even have a link that says you can manage your reservation.
Okay.
You can go in that way. I mean, that tells you you're already in the system, just the fact that you have that interaction.
Okay, so they've got a confirmation email that should be in their inbox. Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up for public comment and then we'll come back for discussion. So if you
Okay.
could just hang around in case there's
Sure.
clarification points. I see no hands raised in the schoolhouse. I also see no hands raised online. Give it a second. Okay, so we can bring it back, and if there's any last discussion points from the council, now's the time. Helen, do you want to?
Just thank you for what you guys are doing. And I hope that the town and the committees can work with you to make more progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig, anything?
Just that, yeah, it's been a long time coming to get LRA maps. I mean, slowed up our safety element and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm really glad that we're moving this forward. And we certainly appreciate the work that you're doing and the work you've done with our committees. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mary?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, Rebecca, anything?
No, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you. We know how much energy you put in and it's really appreciated. We appreciate the communication. We're going to have you back soon to have a different topic discussed. And yeah, if there's ever anything that we can do to help support your efforts by communicating and underscoring available resources, let us know. But thank you very much for
I
coming. this
really
evening.
appreciate that from everyone. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
I did have one other thing, which was how great your new facility is. And so
Great.
excited about, we have the administration right here in town, and they have the hardware over there in Woodside, but we have the people you can go talk to right here. So it's a beautiful, beautiful facility.
Thank you.
Yes,
It did. It
We're
came
all
out
so
very
lucky
nice.
to have it.
And we do have
Okay.
a fire station in town, I would say as well. Let's not forget the one we have here on
We
Portola
have-
Road.
Yeah.
I mean, just because they put their new fancy one in Woodside, we're
pretty-
not,
it's
we're not going to
darn
whine.
good, though.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really
Have a good night.
appreciate it. All right. Next, I think we are moving on to the colleagues memoranda that were submitted. Now, I think they're slightly out of order. So the first one, 7A, is Mary's. And to remind us all, right now, the approach is if 3 out of 5 council members agree to place this on an agenda, then we move forward to do that as separate ones. So right now it's what is the proposal and are there 3 out of 5 council members that agree to agendize that. So Mary, do you want to?
Well, I can talk to it. I think it was mislabeled. I take full responsibility. It wasn't a colleague's memo. I just had written it up that way. It was just supposed to be, you asked me for,
Yeah.
for a validation of what I talked to about her,
Okay.
with her.
Yep.
And I just wanted y'all to read it, and there's nothing further to discuss, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, okay. So you're not looking for that to be placed on a
No,
future agenda?
no,
But
I
thank you
would,
for.
no subcommittees, no nothing to do with this, except it's all part of our reaching out to how we can get things done.
Okay, and it sounds like we should pass this information on. Maybe Terrence can help us pass it on. Sorry, Terrence. You thought you were done. Just asking you to pass on the information that Mary obtained from Habitat for Humanity to others in the planning department and related committees and ad hoc committees that may find it useful to follow up. We don't want to lose the benefit of that information. Okay, sorry about that. Caught you just in time.
I know.
Terrence, do you want to stay for the ADU colleagues memo?
Of course you do.
I know you do. It's not yours, but so I'll let Rebecca give the overview here. But we are proposing to agendize this for action in a future meeting. It's a pretty simple proposal with a lot of background and really helpful information. So Rebecca, do you want to provide an overview?
Sure. Judith and I worked on this proposal, and we are recommending that we create a working group that would consist of 2 members of town council, 1 to 2 members of the ASUC, 1 to 2 the planning commission, and if interested, 1 or 2 ADU working group members to work with staff to identify opportunities to streamline approvals of ADUs and JADUs and to explore options and incentives to encourage the production of ADUs and JADUs. And the working group would be involved in prioritizing the opportunities based on a combination of the ease of accomplishing the task and the most impactful. And within the document, we've detailed all of the housing element programs that have anything to do with ADUs and JADUs. And so this working group would go through those various programs to make a determination of what are the highest priority ones and which ones would be most effective. And then another role of the committee of the working group would be to actually come up with incentives to encourage residents to build ADUs, and as well as to think about what are the processes involved in getting ADUs and JADUs approved? Are there any roadblocks that could be removed? So we are asking to have this brought back on another agenda, on an official agenda item to be considered.
Yeah, the only things I'd add are we had an ADU working group that did great work. I think Rebecca, you were part of that, weren't you? And they gathered a lot of really useful information. It's such an important thing to enhance our support of ADUs and to understand where things might get held up or snagged. And conversely, how do we encourage these, which are units that I think most of Portola Valley feels very comfortable are in keeping with our, the look and feel of our town, and still provide a very useful purpose for people looking to enjoy affordable housing. We'd have to be careful about how we structure this so that we're incentivizing the right way. So an ad hoc committee to us, or sorry, a working group to us felt the best way to do it. It would not be Brown Act unless Catherine tells me otherwise.
We can get the substance at the next meeting, but generally speaking, Brown Act applies to all sorts of committees with the exception of committees that only consist of less than a quorum of one legislative body. So
Okay,
this is
got it.
sounding like a Brown Act committee.
Okay, all right, well, TBD. But to bring it back to get into the details of how it works and what the staff resources that it would require are, is the proposal. So I'll open it up to questions Helen, do you have anything you want to raise?
I have a comment.
Okay, so any questions? No? Okay, then we go to public comment. I'm not seeing any hands in the schoolhouse. I am also not seeing any hands online. So then we can come back for comment. So, Helen?
So, I think I'm the only one living in an ADU assumption, right? Or having built one.
I have kind of an ADU, but I don't rent it out.
Okay. So, I have strong feelings about this. So my comment is like, I think a lot of times, like right now, for instance, I have at my mom's house, I have a master bedroom that I would love to turn into a JADU, but it's 623 feet. So it's too above our JADU, right? And, having, been constrained by 1,200 square feet, to build, which, I interviewed 9 architects. 7 of them said you couldn't get 3 bedrooms in. I knew you could. As to, to allow families to move in. We have some major constraints. So I feel very strongly, and my comment about this is I would like to see this brought back to council. Thanks.
Great. Mary, any comment?
Happy to bring it back.
I think we just need a vote whether to bring it back or not.
Yeah, unless there's any other comments, that Craig, you have?
Yeah, I have comments.
Please.
So I'm very supportive of it. I think this seems like a great idea and obviously ADUs and JAUs. And I think as Helen points out, there's lots to discuss. This is a rich and fertile area of discussion. The one thing that seemed a little vague to me was the fiscal impact. So I understand that it's going to come, you're going to talk with
Yeah.
staff and come back. But when it comes back, I would like to see it with a reasonably accurate cost estimate. It can't just be, well, we'll continue to work with staff on costs. It has to be,
Yeah.
we think it's going to be $50,000 or whatever. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but an actual dollar number so that we can get the finance director to figure out where he's going to find the money for it. So that would be my only other comment.
That
But other
makes
than that,
sense.
I would be supportive when it comes back.
Okay. All right. So, can we take a vote on,
Do we need a motion or we just vote?
well,
What
I
have we
mean,
decided?
may we have a motion to bring
I-
this back?
I'll make a motion to bring this back.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, it's coming back. Thank you all. All right. So then we go down to subcommittee reports.
Bye, Terrence.
Thank you, Terrence. Bye. All right, so then we have the submitted reports, CCAG and, CCAG is quite involved, and then Mary's, Trails Committee. Are there any other subcommittee reports, liaison reports?
I've got one very
Okay.
short one. So the newly formed town council subcommittee working with the EPC subcommittee on the EOP and the EOC met this afternoon. And I think we had a fruitful discussion on the general direction. And I'm really impressed with the group. I think that, we're going to make a lot of progress there. So I think too, we were talking priorities earlier. The EOP is the first focus and I expect, good progress.
That's great.
So, so Craig, and I met with this subcommittee and from the EPC, and they did meet. I sent out, to Mark, but they met last Thursday, the notes from it. So I did send it, if Mark can send out the notes. They met with the Department of Emergency Management, from the county. And it was a really, really fruitful and helpful discussion about our structure and how to move forward. From that, then we met today, and I looped Craig in so we are starting with the EOP because that's the higher level. Out of that will come the EOC. And there was discussion about how the separation of the safety element as well. So we are working on that. And they said we'd meet back in person in about a month after everyone's reading their background and starting to consolidate, and then there'll be a framework for the EOP to start with. So.
Great. Sounds like a good start. Any others? I have a report from the Planning Commission. I'm getting confused between special meetings and regular meetings at this point. The special meeting was a priority, I believe, and the project was approved, subject to conditions. I don't want to get into it. I'd rather people get the more accurate portrayal from the minutes of that meeting, but it was approved and it will be moving forward. The second was the discussion of the zoning. Terrence has left. We shouldn't have let him leave.
Of course not.
But bottom line is that the planning commission preferred to have the staff go back and look again at the dimensions of the Dorothy Ford Open Space and Park area to figure out how to characterize the 2.48 acres in the housing element. There were discrepancies between the measurements that Terrence identified and the ones that were in the housing element. So it became a complicated discussion, but they asked for that to go back to staff for further work. I believe it's going to be agendized for us to give input and direction on
It's,
next steps.
April 9th.
On April 9th. So to some of the commentators' points, we should try and do extra outreach for that. It's going to be a very compelling meeting for many people in town, and having them understand exactly what the proposals are and what the benefits and detriments are will be really important. So Mark, you and I can talk about how to support that best via staff.
We'll have 3 options for you to look at.
Great.
It'll be an important meeting, so I encourage the community to get
Okay.
engaged with this one.
Okay.
Along with that, we have the regular housing element report too, so
Okay.
it's housing night.
Okay. Before we move on to recognize Sue Crane, I do want to open it up and see if there's any public comment on the liaison reports. There's none in the schoolhouse. I see none online. So at this point, as was recognized by our prior town manager, we did lose one of the community's most vibrant contributors, Sue Crane, who passed away on March 14th. I'm just going to speak for myself, and other council members can weigh in as well. I do offer my sincere condolences to her family and so many friends in town. And I, together with the entire community, will mourn this loss. She was very well known in our town, but many of us knew her in 1 or 2 areas. But from a wider perspective, once you stopped and read the great articles in the Almanac and her actual book on setting up Ridge, it was just an amazing contribution that she made in so many levels. We recognized her with the Portola Valley Founders Award for lifetime contributions in 2024. It was so very well deserved. She was a member of the General Plan Review Committee, member of the Planning Commission, member of the Town Council, mayor of the town twice. She was chair of the Town Center Committee for purchasing the Portola Valley School and converting it into the town center. Friend of the Portola Valley Library, president of that body, and served on various committees for our 50th anniversary. These are only a tiny reflection of her entire contribution. On a personal level, I just remember her coming out and thanking every volunteer she could ever see many, many times for their time and effort. I remember her smile and just the twinkle in her eye every time she was talking with you. On a personal level, my husband ran the Portola Valley Bakery. She just decided she was fed up with waiting in line and stepped up and started selling with him the bread. She did get dibs on the good stuff that she liked. And her stories about co-founding Ridge were just spectacular. So really a life that should be well admired and she will be missed. So I'll open it up to any other council members who wish to make remarks.
Yeah, I'll just-
Anybody?
Yeah,
Helen?
I also want to
Go ahead.
pass along my
Becca.
sincere condolences and how impressed I was with her background and all her contributions. And I just appreciated her support, and I had no idea she was over 90. That's
Well, I've known Sue since I first came here in the late 80s, I guess. And she's been a stalwart friend. I loved her husband, and I loved the whole family. The boys are wonderful. She does represent all the best in love of music, love of life, love of wine, love of being a steady hand on the tiller wherever she was. She is a great swimmer, and of course, swimmers are in for the long haul. And she was always in for the long haul. Her consistency was remarkable. And she stayed active, very active, of course, as we all know, at the Sequoias, but active in so many ways through her entire life. She's to be congratulated wherever she is.
So I would just say she epitomized volunteerism for Portola Valley. And, you know, the level of energy is just fantastic. So she will be missed.
Helen?
So I got to serve with Sue on the Housing Element Committee, the second one for the town. And she just was such an institution for the town, and a spark plug, and something that no one else has mentioned, but, you know, a groundbreaker too, because not many women were on council. You know, now we're a majority on this council, but, you know, for that era to have a woman on the council, really grateful that she did that for other women, and was supportive and help and just, you know, spoke truth to power. So my sincere condolences, and I am grateful that I got to know her a little bit.
All right, well, I would ask everybody to just take a few moments after when they get home and just think of their favorite Sue story. There's a lot to celebrate there. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I
Okay. All right, so if people want to take a short break, we can reconvene out of recess to go back to the priority setting discussion. We were wrapping up the safety discussion, so we'll finish that off and then move through. I was hoping for 5, but why don't we come back at 8:15? Yep. Okay, so we are back to continuing our study session that we stopped at 6:55 tonight to do our regular meeting. Where we left off was when we were talking about the safety items, the safety priorities. We had been substantially through the discussion. There, I know, were items to be circled back on with Craig and I believe Helen and anybody else. So do you want to start us off?
Right,
again?
and then you were going to make your comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the only comment I had, Rebecca, was relative to your So I think we should think about having a disaster council, and that's something that many jurisdictions have. And I think that would make sense for the EOP and EOC and that kind of stuff. I'm hesitant, though, you sort of wrapped up that and the safety element and a bunch of other stuff. And so I'd like to see those separated out, because the safety element is part of the planning department. It's really a different thing than emergency management. So I think that was my only concern with that request was, I think we were merging too many things into one, you know, what you call the task force. But I like the idea that we could have a disaster council with the town manager, and, you know, we could pick the members and they could suggest, these are the things that we should have. And then the council can ratify that and move that step forward, because I think that would be a valuable asset to the town.
I should say, Mr. Vice Mayor, that we do have, both of these colleague memos are scheduled to come in at the April 9th meeting if we talked about it tonight. We're talking about it tonight, so it'll be on the agenda for April 9th.
Okay, then I guess a process question, isn't the 9th when we're gonna basically agree on these priorities?
Ratification is the goal.
Yeah,
So-
priorities, but the priority is maybe developing something, but it's not necessarily the details that Councilmember Flynn was outlining.
So what I'm hearing, if I may, is a proposal to modify, refine these safety priorities. And I don't know, Rebecca, if you agree or not, but what I heard Craig say was complete the safety element. Yes, that's fine. I'm hearing you're wanting to have some kind of, I don't know about the term disaster council, but I understand what it is. As part of a follow-up, and I'm not sure if this is, you know, if it can fit under one of these others or be an additional one. I think if we agree in concept that there should be a cross-disciplinary committee that pulls together emergency actions, we will then need to define what is that. So I think for us at the highest level, do we think that type of
Those
approach?
two fit well. You have the safety element and then you have the committee
Well,
idea.
okay,
The details are laid out. in the
Craig,
colleague
what's
memo.
your question or? do you have a
well, my
process
concern is, I
question?
mean, a disaster council actually is an entity, like it's in, I mean.
Forming a separate entity.
It is usually within a jurisdiction, like San Francisco has a disaster council
Okay.
and the mayor and some other. So I mean, it's sort of a well-known thing. And it's about emergency management. The safety element isn't about emergency
Okay.
management, it's a planning. So
Okay.
I would be happy to say that we take the conduct assessment of the EOC and updating emergency operation plan and roll that all under the formation of a disaster council to review and move that stuff forward. That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
But again, my concern was Rebecca's proposal. I mean, I appreciate it was all encompassing, but maybe there's two things there, not just one. It would be my only request.
Yeah, my proposal is not about emergency management. So, it's more about the safety element. I mean, what I'm hearing from various safety committees in town is that they did not get adequate say into creating the safety element. They were stovepiped into each little section. That was all they got to comment on. And the document as a whole, they felt just really didn't encompass what it should have in terms of dealing with many of the hazards and the risks in town. So that's why it comes up with this idea of a cross-disciplinary safety task force that would create the safety element.
But to Mark's, I just want to make sure I'm tracking. You can have the floor back. To Mark's point, what does success look like? I think success is completing the safety element still. And you're talking about a means to get there that is a modification of what we've done to date and details to follow. So it's not really adjusting the end game, the success. I mean, feel free to disagree with me, but I'm trying to figure out what we are agreeing or disagreeing on here.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, that would be sort of the first step of this safety task force, would be to complete the safety element.
Can I?
But there's
comment?
also an issue of management. I mean, like I said, many different groups are working on aspects of safety, whether it's clearing brush, whether it's, dealing with home hardening, whether it's educating residents, whether, there's just a lot of disparate little activities that nobody is looking at it from a big picture and nobody's managing because we don't have any public works people. We don't have a director of public works. We don't have even town engineers. So that normally in my mind as a town or a city all that management activity of coordinating would fall probably into that department. We don't have that, so therefore we need some sort of substitute for that.
Helen, you've been trying to.
Yeah. I mean, like, I do think that our committee structure is not helping our safety, to be honest. I'm not sure creating another committee. I like the umbrella idea, but I also am concerned by creating yet another committee, like or should we look at some sort of annual meetings of these committees or something? Right? I'm concerned by adding one more layer that will not help our safety is my concern. So.
Go ahead, Craig.
So again, what I want to be careful of is there's managing safety within the community and there's the safety element. They're pretty different things and they're related, but they're not the same. The safety element is usually done at a county level. It's not even technically required as I understand it. Well, it's part of the EOP, I should say, is that the safety element is part of the general plan, but it is a very high level document. And it's the things that come in underneath that I think are what a lot of people consider, what we need to do for safety in the community. So I do want to separate out the legal requirement to complete a safety element from here are all the things that we think we need to do in our community to be safe, because they're not one and the same.
So can I offer up a suggestion, which is, can we agree that there should be development of or assessment of the benefit of having a cross-disciplinary committee looking at safety issues on a community-wide basis, maybe as an additional item. I think it could even go under complete safety element and enhance committee participation in additional safety activities or analysis. What I'm trying to do is just get it on here as, is this a priority? If it is a priority, when does it need to happen? I think completing the safety element, since I haven't commented, I will. I think by the end of the year, that makes complete sense. To get that done, we have to, and it's compliance with law, and getting a more intelligent way of collecting the community expertise and safety or different perspectives on it. I'm not sure what the right way is, but I would think that's something that we should assess, because there could be an enhancement of what we're doing. To your point, exactly what does that look like? I don't know tonight, but I do think there could be an assessment of like what's going to be a beneficial and expeditious way to get that input, and on what frequency, to your point. Is it annual? Is it a regular meeting? I don't know.
Another
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Can I ask staff, can I get clarification on the safety element situation for the town? I realize that it doesn't seem to be part of the prep group that the county is running. So I'm just curious what the status of our safety element for clarification purposes.
It's what I sent out in the response back to you about that question, that
I didn't ask that question.
I sent it out to the council, what I thought could happen if we can staff it appropriately. We can get it done in 6 months, if not 12 months. So Terrence and I are working on what appropriate staffing looks like. The safety element, as Craig has indicated, is part of the general plan.
I think Helen's asking a different question, and Helen, I'm lost a little bit on
Right, so
some
let
of
me
what you're.
clarify.
Yeah.
So like EPC today asked the status.
The
They'd-
status is
they-
we haven't done it. It's on hold until we figure out how we're going to run it.
Okay, and so we don't have a consultant, it's on hold completely. Is that right? Just for clarification, just so that we understand the status. It's completely on hold. There's no
That's correct.
consultant. There's nothing
There's-
happening with it.
That's
Okay.
correct.
If I
Great.
may, through the mayor.
Yeah, please.
There was prior work done on the safety element. I believe, it started in 2023, and I
Yeah.
believe it was before even that. But as of
That's right.
late, there has not been any additional work to the safety element.
Yeah, it was worked on, then put on hold to finish the housing element. And we haven't pulled it off on hold.
Great. Okay. Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
Okay.
And then just to clarify the memo you sent out, it was budget, the expected budget was 25,000 to 30,000 for added consultant work. And if we had those additional resources, the town estimated it could be completed in 6 months. Without additional resources, it would take 12 months.
That's correct.
But it
That's what I
would
sent out.
require a reallocation of staff time.
Right.
But my question is that it is a legal document, but based on talking to many different safety committee members, they all felt that it needed to be reorganized, if you will, not thrown out, but certain parts just, I know as a sustainability committee member, we evaluated one tiny little section, the climate resilience section. And a lot of the things in there should have really gone into, that was our comments, that it really should have gone into different sections and shouldn't have been in that section. So, and I think everybody had that set. Geological safety told me that it didn't even deal with evacuation and landslides, I think. Just, there were sections that
So, and
weren't
I've
there,
talked
but
with every town, I mean, every Brown Act committee, they're all ready to join into the collaborative effort. So it's just, but I agree with Craig, the vice mayor, that there's two different pieces here. One, you
Mhm.
get it done, you put it in the general plan, the other is gonna live. And I think to me, success is the community feels safe. And one of the ways the community feels safe is that there's been a lot of engagement about safety. And you have everything from evacuation. There's a whole lot of things. And I think that this is a unifier for us. I really do. And I agree. So that's why I'm excited about what you're talking about. But it is, one, we can use it maybe to build, but the other was we can really, so I don't want to get too much further into the weeds on this.
Right.
Because we have other things to look at, but I'm hearing clearly that you want something that brings people together from our various committees that isn't duplicative. So we're not having them all doing the same thing separately. Get rid of the silos and working collaboratively, whether it's to help with the safety element or the larger vision that the vice mayor has that I agree with as well. Is that making sense, what I'm getting at here?
I actually would appreciate getting more details about what Craig envisions for disaster, because I'm not familiar with that, so.
We'll
Right.
integrate it.
Bringing it back, I want to come out of this. I wanted to keep this to an hour. We'll go until people feel heard and tired, or both. And so I do want to keep focused. If it goes to how, I don't think that's a tonight discussion unless you want to modify this complete safety element and consider forming additional committee support structure. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but I want to come out with a high level
Yep.
goal that Mark can go off, talk with staff about and say, is this feasible to do within the resources we have? And for us to say, yeah, go for it. That's got to be a top 3 or something. Like, I haven't heard that. I heard everybody saying this is a 2025, complete the safety element and get, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rebecca. I want to get a cross-committee, non-duplicative, safety assessment, effort going. Safety implementation, and however you want to phrase it. I don't think you have to get the wording perfect here, but how would you modify this to get, that item? Because we will be talking about the how in a couple of weeks. Like, we'll be bringing it forward for council to talk about, how to address that.
yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. I just thought that what I learned, which is that this does like to get siloed. Emergency preparedness likes to get siloed. And I suggest that we change the priority name to safety and emergency preparedness. So you separate them out a little bit. Anyway, that's my suggestion, if we bring forward this, this priority list.
Well,
That
I,
the-
I do want to keep safety element as a separate item. We got to do it. Like everything
Safety-
else
No,
around
I'm
it-
just saying on the top, town council priority, safety and emergency preparedness. That's the title.
Well, we're not supposed to be changing the priority category tonight. I don't think it matters, but if you want to, you can, the strategy column, feel free to make, like, it's down there. It's emergency operations. If, do you feel something's missing from one of those line items?
No, I think there's something, I think that our priority list needs a little, it's an annual adjustment. And I would suggest that you separate safety and emergency preparedness. And I mean, it's only okay to keep it in, under the topic of safety, but they're clearly both very important. And I think they should be equally weighted when you talk about this. But I'm willing to withdraw my suggestion if there's resistance or there's a reason. I'm all for the unifying. If I got the floor, I'm going to use it for a minute because I did prepare a memo about One Health. And One Health is just a whole different way of talking about safety and emergency preparedness and all this kind of thing that has to do with a medical model. And I'd be interested, and I don't have anything to say more than that, but I'm going to present my colleague's memo at the next meeting.
So Mary, are you saying that medical aspects of safety are what you would want as a
There
priority?
is, as we have just gone through COVID and did a very unprofessional job of it, I think we could have One Health be included in that. One Health includes zoonotic diseases, animal health, animal husbandry, whether you use sheep, goats, or cattle to do your restoration.
So what I'm
It's a whole
hearing
different thing.
is emergency preparedness measures is a high level and public health
Is another one.
efforts. All right, does anybody have a problem refining these strategies to include those? As a high level, you're not saying it's the top priority.
This, and I feel like public health is under that umbrella often, but maybe but no, okay, it's separate.
It's all
The
about prevention.
Physician, okay. But I feel like, you're a physician. I feel like public health is not in the purview of our council. I do feel like emergency preparedness is, to be honest. So I support the emergency preparedness aspect.
But you're open to that, including as appropriate medical issues that the community faces. Is that okay, Mary?
Although,
No, I think prevention, health prevention is critical in the community. I think it's the basis of a good community.
Right,
But
but is
that's-
that our charter as the council? Like, that's what I'm struggling with is, this is a medical thing, which I get, and our
It's not
staff.
actually a medical thing. It's a community, grassroots community.
Well, since we don't know what One Health
Yeah,
is,
but
Mary,
I'm gonna-
that's,
yeah.
we're a little handicapped.
Right,
to
I was
react.
asked not to
Yeah, no, I don't want you to get ahead of things. It's just, I'm
Hmm.
trying to figure out, you're equating it to safety. I don't think anyone here would be objecting if an appropriate measure, communicating risks, that the county says we need to, like, I can see there is an avenue there to link it. I just don't know how to articulate it
Okay,
tonight. as
I don't
a
either.
high-
And,
Happy
and
to
Okay,
wait.
so we'll wait.
Would prefer to separate out safety and emergency preparedness. Because safety is not necessarily about catastrophizing. It's about making a safe and coherent community.
So can we add a strategy which is to consider a charter for a task force to evaluate and propose safety enhancements in the town? And just as a new one, like I don't want it connected to the safety.
Yeah,
element, like that
I'm
doesn't
fine
feel
with
right.
that. I
Is
would,
that, Rebecca, does that get
Yeah.
enough of
Yeah.
what you're after?
I think so,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm trying not to get into the details, and then
But let's not-
your colleague's memo coming in, then we can use that to help further the details,
Yeah.
but,
yeah,
we
I
can
think
just stay
that
up there?
works.
Okay.
Just add that. And Corey, did you get that? Okay. All right,
Yes.
I'd like to move on from safety.
Are we voting on that?
No,
Okay.
these are going to come back for ratification later.
Okay.
You'll have another bite at the apple, so to speak. In April. Okay. The next one, responsible land use, and we called it that, but it's a lot to do with planning. So, let's start. I don't know, how do you want to start? I don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I, I absolutely think that the housing element is the priority, in my opinion. So I would prioritize that. Um, we need better permitting services for the town. I actually think that our municipal code is onerous and so, you know, our staffing levels are so low, it goes back to the finances, but I also do wonder about some of our, because the implementation of our code is onerous for everyone involved, if are any opportunities, to do that with, of course, that's a huge bite. But I did want to mention that as part of better permitting. So I feel like, the housing element is the priority and considering streamlining option, but we're bringing it back to the ADU and JADU support program. And I would also actually do the opt-in program. So those three.
So, in terms of when, mid-year, end of year, what would you?
I would put as the number one priority to, let's get our housing element certified. We, move that. That is top, to me. And then following, because without that certification, we can lose, as our roads deteriorate, we could lose further funding potentially. So, and we could get a builder's remedy project in still. Obviously, that hasn't happened. We've been lucky. If you I think Saratoga just got 22 or something builder's remedies in. So, and then I would work on opt-in program and ADU and JADUs.
By mid-year or end of year? If you
Right.
care.
My prioritization is pass the housing element, get that done and do the, zoning. And then following, so it seems like the housing element is taking some further time, but I would have, by July 1, by end of fiscal year, beginning of new fiscal year, I would finish our housing element if possible, which would be a big push considering we're April 1st. And then opt-in and ADU, JADU programs.
And I will note that the housing element strategy and zoning are going to come up in April. So I don't know that we need to view that as a strategy. I mean, they're imminent. Craig?
So in terms of post, adoption plan, I basically think end of year. It just because we have, to me, the number one priority is finance, to be honest. So I know within this, the housing element's important, but if we're not a town, then I kind of feel like the housing element's irrelevant. So I would trust staff to work on this as soon as they can, but I'm happy with this being looked at as a December for the post-adoption, just given all the other things that are going on. I would say the same for the opt-in, and I'd say the same for the ADU, JADU support programs. The zoning, again, I realize we've deferred through the planning commission. I was hoping that was going to move forward. I would like to see that in July. I don't know if that's realistic. Developing and implementing an open space preservation plan, I would defer that for this year. And beginning to explore the town center master plan, I would defer that. But what I do think we need to look at in some, at least light measure, is what our recreational needs are, because again, if we're gonna go out and look for revenue because we think we need to build 3 more pickleball courts or something, I think we should have some sense of that, which is a little bit different than a complete redo of the town master plan. So if we think there's some short-term, in the next, in maybe as much as 5 years, then we ought to at least have a rough sense so that when we're thinking revenue enhancement, we're thinking, all right, well, here's a bucket we should try to make sure we have money for.
Mary?
Oh, yeah, maybe starting with the bottom. I didn't think that the last one was a priority at all. Beginning exploration of the town center master plan. The development and implementation on open space preservation, I thought that might have been a misprint. Are we talking about restoring our open spaces? If we are, the Conservation Committee has done that and they're ready to go. The funding is the only issue. The third one is align zoning regulations with the adapted housing element. I put down 12/31/25. I don't know whether that's realistic or not.
25?
25.
Yeah, just want to make sure I heard it.
Yeah, that's what it said. The implementation of the ADU, JADU, I don't have any sense of how we can do that, but 12/31/2025 sounds good to me, if that's the consensus. And the guidelines, I thought we had started them, and I thought we had some applications already. So I'm a little behind on that. And beginning implementation of the post-adoption plan for the housing element, I think 12/31/2025 is optimistic, but possible, but not June.
It's only to begin the implementation, which we are frankly already doing.
Okay.
We've begun it.
Oh, okay.
It's a
Well-
question of how far we want to prioritize the rest of what needs to happen. We're
Whether
going to
I-
be talking about that in the next month
Okay.
or two.
Fine, I think that's, the only thing that you will be a slowdown here is that I think responsible land use and sustainability should be one priority. Because that's what, the main thing that we have that we sustain is our land resource as a town.
As opposed to environmental sustainability.
Or
which is-
environmental and sustainability, but I
That's
think it
down.
could be, as you can see, it's a small and not very interesting list under environmental sustainability. But I think it's important that we realize that responsible land use and sustainability are related.
Mhm. Okay.
So I'd rather have them be one priority than, but that's not what we're doing tonight.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
will try and not,
Keep that thought.
maybe too late
All right.
for this year.
Rebecca?
Okay, I'll start from the bottom as well. The town master plan, very low, 2027. Open space, low, 2027. Align zoning for the adopted housing element. So that's a pretty complex and staff intensive and consultant intensive line item. I struggle with this whole thing because there's a ton of things that we need to be doing in planning and building and land use, but we, realistically, we do not have the staff for this yet. And until we hire a planning person, we have no staff and we have no money to pay for consultants to do these things. So again, I'll put it at December 2025, but the reality is, if we want to move forward with Village Square and all these things, there's different zones that are going to be required for that. So that's a lot of
So-
work.
So this is for the adopted housing element, and I think all this is really saying is to get the zoning in place for the current housing element. I take your point that there's a bigger picture planning effort after that that is triggered. So that's why it says close to completion, which we're going to be talking about in April.
Okay,
Because the planning commission item is going to come to us.
right.
But
But
would you still have the housing element approval getting certified
I
in
get to
December?
that, yeah. So I have mixed feelings about the housing element certification. I'd like to know a little bit more about the funding issues. We've been lucky not to have a builder's remedy project, but I have to also think that based on our land values, that it's not we're not a key target for builder's remedy. And based on a lot of the conversations that we've had about these other sites, it's coming down to the idea that if we push planning to move forward with what they came to with the planning commission, I'm not so sure it's a good idea to move forward with rezoning for open space if we're going to be moving forward with these other potential sites, because then we're going to have to reverse that. We may not be allowed to reverse it. We may permanently have our open space stuck at a high density. It just seems like we're doing a lot of extra work. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea of actually spending 10 grand or whatever it would be to survey the site and
Rebecca, I understand where you're going. I share, like, these are good discussions to have because you can do them in two different ways, but we are going to be talking about this when we consider what the planning, because to talk about to give guidance to staff on what to do with the planning commission's redirection back to staff, we're going to have to get into all of this. So I don't know that we have to pick a position here tonight. I do think it's going to come up and we have to deal with it soon. But the question here, I think, is I think that's going to come up in the ordinary course of the next month or two. So I am not so sure it's helpful to tell staff that's number one, since it's coming up and we haven't had that discussion yet. I don't know if that helps,
Right.
but
Yeah, yeah.
it is a hard thing to, like, you almost feel like you're getting ahead of where the process is, or I do. when I
Right,
think
yeah.
about that.
so, yeah, so I'll hold off for the discussion on the housing element till when we actually get on that. Implementation of ADU, JDU support program that we just kind of talked about, they're going to bring back. My feeling is that we should set up that working group by the end of June, and then the actual work of it, will be December. Guidelines for an opt-in program, December. I feel like it's as much as I'd love to have that, I just don't feel like we have the staff or the money for it. And then implementation of the post-adoption plan. I tried to find the post-adoption plan to go and re-review it, and I found one on the website, but I don't think it was the final version, so I'm not 100% sure what is all in there. I think we're moving forward with that, and the dates, December, I mean, just keep continuing to show some progress in there is fine. December's fine. But then I do want to touch on what Helen brought up. I think it's really critical that we figure out what's going on in the building and planning process of people putting in applications and what's happening there. There are problems, a lot of problems, and I really would almost have a working group to evaluate that, because just when things are taking a year and a half, 2.5 to actually get permits finalized, it's just too much.
So Rebecca, I think
I would-
that's the next section, because that's operational efficiency and effectiveness.
Okay,
I think that's where that would be the right place to discuss that.
okay, well, that would be my
Yeah, let's
main
bring that
thing,
back
yeah.
for that one. I mean, we
Okay.
can fit it in some way, here or there, but I think there would be better.
And then I guess the other one is just a housing element program updates. There's a large number of updates in there that we have committed to the state to do last year, this year, next year. And yeah, it's tricky because we have no staff to do them. So in my mind, we need to task our commissions to work on those things. So again, that's not staff, but that would be, from anywhere like the amnesty program, these other programs, we need to get the town involved, not the staff initially. So.
I haven't spoken yet, so
Well-
if you have a comment right now, yeah, go ahead.
Just one, just to try to, and maybe your comment will add to this. I was wondering if we could just, on this alignment of the zoning, just come up instead and say that by July, we will have a plan for getting the housing element certified. And that could include the zone.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to up the strategy to a higher level
Mhm.
and then get us to agree on a date. Because it seemed like some of us are saying July because we're thinking one thing and other people are saying December. So I was just trying to maybe think about a way to evolve that.
Yeah, we've certainly got to have a strategy. I would hope that strategy is very informed in the next month or two as we're having some of these zoning discussions and the like. I think we're going to start formulating that strategy. Certainly by July, we need it. We need it earlier if possible, but I think the discussions that inform that are the ones that are already scheduled. So I would do that. In terms of other priorities, my own view, post-adoption plan is in process. We just have to keep moving along. I wouldn't want staff to have to do anything there unless we look at that. We're going to have an update on it and see if there is something there that needs to rise up. But I think we just keep going with that. There's no deadline for that, but we also don't want to drop it. Opt-in, I think end of the year for me. I don't think it's realistic before then. ADUs, I think we can start sooner in terms of non-staff requirement, but we can't know what that's going to cost until we get staff to tell us on the ADU memo, for example, when it comes up, we'll need to cost benefit analysis will have to come up. So I have a hard time putting a random date on that because I don't know what the staff support is, but I certainly think starting a committee up sooner rather than later is feasible. Zoning, I think that's just in process. I don't need to put a date on that. Open space preservation to me was just making sure we're being thoughtful about an overarching plan. That's not a priority right now, nor is the town center master plan. I'm not saying those are not good ideas, but they are not things I would ask staff to put their efforts into right now. All right, if we are ready to move on to organizational efficiency, I'm going to start down this way. Rebecca, if you want to, I know you mentioned permitting and processes at town hall for planning.
Right.
Is this where you want to?
Yeah, let's
raise
put
it?
it there, yeah, processes for building permits and planning. This is customer service metrics. You may have discussed this a little bit at the very beginning with finance, but I think it's pretty critical to get some dashboards into the town in terms of status updates, in terms of more information. So, I mean, I would put this down as December 2025. Oh, fill vacancies, I missed that right at the top. I don't know that, I mean, that's
So
a high priority to me, but
are you starting from the top or the bottom? just
I meant to
wanna-
start at the top, but I skipped over the fill vacancies, sorry.
Okay.
So obviously that's a huge priority for Portola Valley. I think the staff's already going all out on that, so I
Yeah.
can't add more to that. Customer service metrics, it's very important, but I do not think it needs to be done by June. I think we're talking about December when we have staff to actually, hopefully, put a little bit more effort into that. Promote transparency, the same idea, status December. Update the committee and commission handbook. I think that's in progress. I'm not sure what's left to do that. The only main priority in there is I really would like to have the ASCC membership portion updated so that we can move forward and get one of our missing members in there as soon as possible. So if that could be done by April, that would be great if we can finalize the ASCC membership rules. Cultivate a high-performing team. I mean, I don't see that as a priority for us to ask staff to do that. I think that's when we get a town manager in here. I think we've already got a high priority, high performing team. I think that's up the interim town manager to manage. Update the town website. I would not make major changes there, but I do think small updates would be helpful. I've been in discussion already about the Laserfish download button, which the town staff's already working on. There's small not typos, but areas that could use a little update, but I wouldn't put a priority of time on that otherwise. I think we can use the weekly update to provide more information on our initiatives and our successes and on status updates. I think we can use that more, but I think that's part of the normal day-to-day work of the staff. So that's it. So then I would just add the processes for building and planning to that as a high priority, very high priority.
Meaning mid-year.
Mid-year, yes. I mean, not so much solving them, but at least identifying what could be used, what could be fixed, or, and part of that is also kind of making a decision about the use of third-party consultants. I think there's an analysis that needs to be happen, and I'm sorry I was late today, but one of the things I wanted to add to the whole fiscal thing was just this evaluation of some of our expenses in terms of consulting and that sort of thing. So that would go in there. And that's it for me for that area.
Mary?
Oh, well, I thought that was excellent. Thank you. With filling vacancy, I didn't want to set a date for that because I really value the budget. And I really value having a balanced budget, and I don't think we should break that trend right now. I think it's unhealthy. So when and if we can afford it, establishing customer services, I put a 6/31/2025 because I think that the metrics themselves will help. People will say, oh, they got back to me in 2 days, or, oh, this got turned over to a committee and now I can work with that committee person, or whatever it happens to be that we decide to do. Promoting transparency through enhanced communication. I didn't put a date on that. I think it's just something we do. Update the committee and commission handbook. I said 12/31/2025. It seems like it's a shoo-in. We can do it. It's done. It's been done, basically. We just need a little staff looking over it. Cultivate a high-performance team. Like you say, I think it's a done deal. We did it. But if we would need to solidify a few little inklings, June would be a good date to have that done. Updating the town website, I agree that it's just day-to-day routine work that good people are trying their best to do in a timely fashion. And I don't think we need an overhaul of our website.
All right, Craig?
In terms of filling the vacancies, I put July for the town manager and the planning director. I think those are the important vacancies we need to fill, because at that point, we can then talk about what other vacancies are really essential. So I'd like us to really focus on those two positions. In terms of establishing customer support metrics, I would like by July to have a basic metric of like the number of planning applications and sort of roughly, how long they've been in the system. So it doesn't have to be complicated. I'm not looking for customer service metrics on all things our staff does, but I think in terms of just basic, you're applying for a permit, there should be some basic metrics for that. And I think we could get those by July. Promoting transparency, I sort of lump that with cultivating a high performance team. Those things are all great when you have, a fully fleshed out team. I think right now the team's doing a great job given the number of them and the things they have to do. But in terms of what we want to do as a town, I think there's more to do. And I don't put that on staff. I put that in the fact we have a lot of open vacancies. The committee and commission handbook, I'm okay with the end of the year, although I think Patty's working on it and I would expect it's considerably sooner. But I don't think that we need to make that a priority for staff to push it. And updating the website, I would defer that right now. I think it would be a nice to have, but given the other things we have to do, I would just defer.
So I actually am gonna say cultivate a high performing team with professional development as the priority, because without the staff that we currently have, we can't do anything. So by high performing team, I also just mean cultivate professional growth, and support our staff. Because then that will lead to filling vacancies. So, right, because when you have a strong, good culture, other people want to come. So, so I would put those both as July 1, 25. In terms of the permitting, I mean, I appreciate the idea of metrics of what we're getting in, and how long it's taking. But again, I actually really, anytime you're trying to permit something, it's a land use authority situation. And so I actually would put that back into responsible land use, because deciding how we, use our authority in land use in town. So I like the idea, the general metric idea for efficiency, but then I still want to see consideration of looking at our permitting in general for our land use to see what's going on with it. I have been told that our code is extraordinarily complicated. And I don't know if there's with our current bandwidth, I'm not sure what to do about that, but I just wanted to mention what I've heard. So, promote transparency. I always hope that public servants that we, and the town council, that we're transparent, seeing as many communications out as possible. Again, it takes staff to write it every week. And it's a lot. So, I think it's important to be as transparent as possible. So hopefully by, December, I don't know, is Elizabeth, am I just missing it because I'm not on the forum? Is Elizabeth doing it once a week or once every other week or something?
So the newsletter comes out twice a month. And
Okay.
any additional items that come through, we do submit sort of an e-news blast that you might see as well.
Great.
But if you are
Okay.
having issues receiving it, please let me know and we can check to make sure you're on the listservs.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Need to sign up.
Okay. So that's great to know that it's every, twice a month. And so thank you. So I would also put transparency as high, just because, but I think that we've got it in progress and permanently ongoing. So thank you for that. And the website I think is fine. And it sounds like the committee and commission handbook is progressing. So, let me make sure I have a couple more comments. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the permitting, I do think we can get started looking at what is happening by July. I think it's a really tall ask for two reasons to actually put that in place by July, which I don't think you were saying, Craig. I think you were saying let's get an understanding of what's going on by then. But there's two reasons. One is we won't have defined the what we want to recommend as the goal by then. I think that's going to take a little while for us to figure out. The other is it's just going to be hard to actually implement that. So I agree it would be good to look at, especially around planning and timelines, and try and figure out ways to just monitor when delays are happening and why. I would like to see that improve by the end of the year, but I think we can maybe get a preliminary read by July. I just want to be realistic with what we can actually expect as an ongoing a deliverable by July. In terms of filling the vacancies, I don't know if we'll be done by July, but certainly in the summer, the goal would be to have the planning director and town manager, but we've got a process in place and mapping it out depending on availability. We should be in good shape for the summer. So I think that's already in process. In terms of the other things that are here, transparency, I do think we're doing better. We're doing what we can with what we have, it would be good to get to a point where there's an easier way to access information through the website. So those are linked, but I think trying to figure out what we can do to the website. I'm in particular wanting information around the planning to be a little bit more easily ascertainable, and the finances, because we're going to be going to the public and trying to explain to them, what's going on with the finances. So I think just simple, I would want it done in the near term, just posting some of Tony's presentations in an obvious place on the website where people can find it easily. That I would want done sooner rather than later. Anything else I think can wait. In terms of the high performing team, I do think we're doing better, and I do think we tried. I agree with Helen that the growth of the staff is an important attribute to offer to employees and to build a functioning staff. But I don't know what to do with that by July. I don't know that that's something we can put a metric around. So I do want to think about that. I certainly think it should be a priority by the end of the year to come up with a framework. And the permitting metrics, I guess that's the last thing. The handbook's in process. I'm not worried about that. So those were just the refinements of what I've heard my colleagues offering up.
Could I add one
Yeah,
more?
please.
So it kind of falls again between the responsible land use and the organizational effectiveness. I think we need to understand better, or at least document better, the process for changing ordinances or creating new ones. Like, for example, the fencing ordinance is kind of in the town hall, but it's unclear to me or to the Conservation Committee how that moves forward. So I think at least documenting the process so people understand what the next step is for just any kind of ordinance that gets fixed or updated or whatever. I think that would be really helpful. So it kind of falls between the two. I mean, it's definitely an organizational efficiency and effectiveness sort of item, but it happens to be about responsible land use. So, as we update or change things, we kind of need to have a better idea of what the best process is and how we fit in so that the committees know what the next step is. So
Are you saying you want to keep that in organizational efficiency and just have a reference to?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it would
Because
go.
to me, that does overlap with something around zoning and
Mhm.
regulations for planning.
Yes.
And I don't know that that's, like, I think that's information that you can just ask for. I wouldn't think that that's something that needs to be a big initiative. Like, if you need to understand the steps, I don't know. Kevin, you can tell me if that's like a big educational effort, but is that something that we need to take extra time with, or is that something somebody can just?
Yeah, I mean, if
Get it through.
Terrence were still here, he'd probably say you can just check with me in terms of the process. For ordinances that are not zoning or don't fall squarely within the priorities, what council has done in the past is actually brought them forward with a colleagues memo. And that was what one of the ordinances, I believe it's on the reusable foodware. That was one that Councilmember brought forward with a colleagues memo and is on staff's list to work on. So it also probably depends on the substance of the ordinance.
So I guess my thing is the colleagues memo, for example, unclear to me if we as a council decide to move forward with it, with any colleagues memo, how does it kind of fit into the priorities? Because is it going to bump out something else, or is it going to, that's where I'm a little confused about how we, if we establish priorities, but every day we come up with something new. So how are we going to establish what gets bumped, or what that process is? So that's where I'm a little.
Well, that's part of Mark's job, to help us monitor that and to get back to the council saying, this is going to take resources. You have to make a choice between X and Y as we implement. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
want to put
no,
words in your
that's-
mouth, but.
We'd have to bump out something. And, you know, here, I mean, I'm gonna summarize some of these because if I took everything that you said, you've added to our work. So we're gonna summarize it, put it
Yeah.
into how they hang together. I think something like a process for changing ordinances that could be simply looked at. Like our attorney said, you know, you this, that, or the other, but there's implications for any of these things. I know the fencing one is up right now. If that gets worked through, then maybe that goes away. So it depends what's happening at the time that will drive it. Those things will still come to me,
Mhm.
even if they may not be on that list, and then we'll make some kind of calculation when we write the report up and say, well, we can spend some time on this, but.
Right.
you know, we won't.
Yeah, so part of the answer is you're gonna have to be working with us to communicate.
But I know how life is. Things
Yeah.
come up. And I'm not going to tell you we can't do anything about it. I may say, here's a consequence of doing
Mhm.
something about it or a delay of doing something about it.
Okay.
But I've learned over time that I'm not going to say you can't do anything about it because it's not on your priority list.
Yeah.
It's just not real.
Okay. All right, so I want to know if there's anything we are actually modifying on the organizational efficiency. We've given feedback on timeframes. There's a little discrepancy, but we'll have another look at that when it comes back for ratification. I've heard people saying they want a reference to planning, permitting somewhere in here. I don't know if you feel strongly enough it needs to be recorded in here in modified language or whether you're comfortable that it would fit in one of these. So Craig, I think you were one of the ones, or Rebecca, on planning and permitting. What do we want to change here, if anything?
Well, it could fit under the established customer service metrics, I guess, or it could fit under promote transparency. If the idea is just to get access to a tracking spreadsheet, then it would be under, but,
So I did hear three of us talk about permitting metrics. So it was Vice Mayor Taylor, Councilmember Flynn, and myself. So three of us definitely, great, four of us. Oh, thank you. Councilmember Hupty. So there's four of us who would like some metrics on permitting. Is what I
So
heard.
is it metrics? I agree that permitting and getting feedback on processes that are resident facing, I think is the way I interpreted it, around planning and building. But what is it? Because getting metrics, I think just what is success, to Mark's point? Success is people are feeling like their permits are, they understand the process and how that works.
Right. I think sometimes, I mean, right now, I think we need to know how many have been submitted, right? And then how many have been processed. Some really basic.
and what's
And
hanging
this
them
is-
up?
And then I think what's right, and what's hanging them up. But I think initially, the initial ones would be how many have been submitted and how many have been processed, right? Those two metrics, because sometimes some of the software that, and I don't know if Portola Valley is using software to track or not, like,
Are we talking planning or building?
Well, I'm not sure that you need to.
Because
distinguish.
planning, Good City controls our entire planning
right, so
for
Good City, but
applications. And
I
Good City
mean-
has a spreadsheet that they track. They track every application comes in. I assume they put the date on and when it comes and they assign it to somebody. So all of that is visible. My understanding is that's visible to the town, but it's not visible to us as a group. And if we want to evaluate what's going on.
So how is reports on planning and building service metrics? Is that something you want to consider, modified if you want?
Sounds good.
Sounds good to
Okay.
me, yeah.
And then,
But it did, I just want to be clear,
Yeah, please.
all I was looking for was metrics. So I'm not looking for, we've solved the problem. I'm looking for, we have 30 applications and 20 of them have been in the queue for 180 days. Those are metrics.
Mhm.
Then we can decide as a council, our goal is not to have any that have been over 180 days. But that's not what I was expecting. But I think by July, just getting, and I know we have two different, I mean, to your point, Rebecca, we have good cities and we have within our planning department. So there's two versions of this, and I would expect the metrics that would merge these together. So we would say, this many permits are in here, and some rough sense of what stage, define some stages, and then be able to talk about the permits and how many are in
Cause
which
it-
stage.
because at that point, it would feed into what are the service metrics we want to aim for
aim
in the
for, yes, exactly,
longer time, but
exactly.
not actually formulating that by July.
Yeah,
Right.
not formulating the goal. for
Right.
the
Oh,
metric.
Right. And I would appreciate actually, oftentimes that 50% of construction. Right, to break it out, like, I switched a hot water heater out and it took 60 days to get permitted, right? So to have it broken out to like what, over the counter, type projects versus remodels that are more than 50% and less than 50%.
Or there could be other divisions.
Yes, but
It just, I think it needs to be in sort of a spreadsheet that allows us to kind of have or allows us or allows the staff or allows a subcommittee to kind of make some determinations of where the problems might be. But
If I may, through the mayor, I do
Please.
have the information, I believe, for us to be able to come back with some information for the council.
Okay, so that's achievable to give us metrics, and then we can use that to inform. Okay, thank you. All right,
But then I have one more thing
Yeah,
on this list,
please.
just as a general comment. When you're writing these strategies and you're reviewing them, the way I try to think of these is I look at the strategy and then I think, what does it look like? What's success look like? And so fill vacancies, if it's hire a town manager and a planning director, I get what the end game is. Promote transparency through enhanced communication. I don't know what that means. And the same thing with cultivating high-performance staff. So I think Helen's earlier comments, I completely agree. And we left money in the budget to make sure that the teams, could basically do continuing education. So it's not at all that I don't think that these are important. I just think they're worded in a way that I don't
Well,
understand
there-
what success means.
by way of background, we're not having an original setting the priority session. These are the items we ended up with last year. And I agree with your statement about some of them are implementable and measurable and some are aspirational. But I personally don't feel it's a good use of our time to rephrase them. That's why I wanted to propose that we refine them. If you have a specific deliverable or the success metric, feel free. But if you don't, I don't know that it's going to be a good use of time to refine it unless you've got something
Well,
specific
I'd
in mind.
Okay, well, I certainly don't want to refine it in the meeting. What I was after was, I don't know if we give Mark direction and say, this should get done by July, then Mark knows what to do. Because if I were Mark, I wouldn't know what to do with these two. So I wouldn't work on them very hard because I wouldn't know how to deal with them. So all I'm saying is, I think staff can work on these and Mark can work on them. Because if we're asking Mark to make sure by the end of the year, I mean, I don't know what we've decided on these dates, but if cultivating a high-performance team is something we want to have by the end of the year, Mark ought to understand what we're asking him to do by the end of the year. That was all I was after. So I'm okay with that aspirational, and maybe it's just that the team morale is better. I mean, whatever, but there's something that I should go back to Mark and say, did you accomplish the things? He goes, yeah, I did X. And I go, great, we're done. So that's sort of.
Yeah,
what
I
was
just
after.
wanted to be very clear what we were and were not doing and where we started and did not start from tonight. So that's I have no problem, the next time we set priorities, which I expect will happen in the next year, that we can take a different tack. I would support that. But right now, if people can think of something that would satisfy that, like, oh, that clearly worked or was done, I think you can, make suggestions. Once you see the updated list, Corey, I think you're probably going to circulate this back to us, and feel free to flag items that you think need further clarification from us. But it would be good for all of us to see this. It's been a long discussion. Last is the environmental sustainability. It's very short, relatively speaking. One's in process, two are not started yet. And the question for the council is, are these priorities near term and any refinements? So,
Can I start?
yeah, please.
Great. So obviously, reach codes under the Berkeley case, for those of you who might not be familiar, there was a lawsuit brought against Berkeley about reach codes, and they were found to be illegal the way it was implemented. So, so I appreciate that staff has not started on that, because we cannot afford to be sued. There are other options on reach codes, but they're heavy lifts. So my question for Catherine is, would it be legal potentially to say, if someone comes in with all electric projects, that they could be at the top of the queue? Is that legal?
I'd have to research that. I also wanted to clarify that the town actually has adopted reach codes, but they're not being implemented due to that Berkeley case. So it would take some work to consider and research alternatives, such as your suggestion.
So there are two alternatives. Los Altos Hills and Santa Cruz has implemented one. Palo Alto and, I'm gonna forget, has implemented the other. It's, both are risky, is my understanding. But there are less risky opportunities to, encourage people to, when they're doing their projects, to change things out to all electric, to do more electric implementation and not require it. So I wanted to start with that. It's a tricky one because of the legal costs and the risk. Developing a climate action plan, again, these are a lot of staff bandwidth. So what we could do is to recommend, instead of staff working on this, to have the sustainability committee look at the two options that are available at the Los Altos code, which is some think are more risky. It's anything over 50% of a remodel is, needs to be all electric pretty much. And they follow the BACMed, now bad, Bay Area Air Quality District. It's based on air quality, and the other one is on is what Palo Alto has done. And you still couldn't allow gas, but you allow it to be more, you encourage more all electric, but you can allow, it's further than Title 24. So my recommendation is, instead of having staff, is having the sustainability committee work on this and consider it. And I also would recommend having the sustainability committee look at the TDM requirements that are required for over 100 trips for larger buildings.
What is that?
Transportation demand management. That is a requirement now for that Rebecca wrote up. And it is a requirement. What I'm not sure about is if affordable housing developments are exempt. I can't remember. So, and then the climate action plan, it's in progress. It takes time. So, but, fiscally, I feel like that should be our, the other ones, housing element and fiscal and safety would be, these are higher priorities to me than this stuff for staff.
Greg?
I think Helen at the end summed it up well for me. I mean, as painful as it is for me to say, I think environmental sustainability right now, I would defer all of these until next year, given we have finance issues, housing issues, and safety issues.
Mary?
The safety element and the housing element should make these goals possible by 12/31/2025. I think the other work is what's going to make these happen. And I don't see any of these as really being an important priority.
Okay. Rebecca?
So I agree that most of these require heavy, particularly need another sustainability person. So the climate action plan, it says it's in progress, but since Brandy left, I don't think there's anything happening there. I would not at this point put any of these three as a priority for staff to work on, but I really would like to have like the sustainability committee, which is kind of on hiatus right now, but them or other volunteers to start working on some of these items. And I do want to mention a couple of things. We've been talking about the need to retrofit the town buildings heating system. And a priority for us is based on funding. PCE has a $64,000 grant that they've given us that we're supposed to tell them what we're going to use the money for by July 1st. We can request a delay of a year, but we've already we're low on that. So I think Mark would need to determine if we could have some staff time to put into figuring out how to use that money in terms of perhaps replacing our gas heater at the town hall with some heat pumps or whatever. I don't, what would be required from a staff time to figure that out? Maybe we have to wait for a town engineer to be on staff for that. But that is something that we're going to have to deal with in the next 3 months. We have to make a decision about whether we're going to ask for a 1-year delay or we're going to decide on using that funds for something. The other thing is I haven't gotten the complete confirmation of this, but the EV charging grant, supposedly MTC is giving that to us. I don't know any of the details about when that has to be started or implemented, but that is something, hopefully we'll have a town engineer that can work on that. And that would, based on the details from MTC about when that has to be implemented, we may have to apply staff time to getting that project moving forward. So, I mean, it's a little up in the air right now, but my understanding is that they recommended that it be approved. So that is something the staff will have to look into. So they will have to put some time into that. And then the BPTS is working on the local roadway safety plan, and that does need to be passed this year by June. I don't think it's going to require much in the way of staff time, but because we're just using a template and they're just adding a couple of sections to that. So I don't expect that to use huge staff time, but it does need to be completed by June so that we're eligible for funding. So those are just small things that I don't think are going to require major time. And again, some of the others areas, Conservation is working on priority conservation areas. Again, they're planning to do all that in their own committee. So yeah, they may require a little bit of staff support, but that's not major. So I guess in general, these are nothing else is major, but I would like to have a little bit of time set aside for some of these things, just to have it in the planning.
Mark, I have a question for you on some of these things. Did they rise to the level of needing input as a town priority or not? Or are things like the EV charging, BPTS, heating system, are those something that you just handle in the ordinary course because there's a deadline, it appears. It looks like Tony's coming up to answer the question.
It'll all be flushed out in the budget process.
Okay, so when you're
We are planning a CIP meeting in May. So
Planning
these
what?
items can be brought up in the capital improvement plan. Because these will be capital
Okay.
improvements.
Okay.
We can flesh out what needs to be done and be voted on for the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of that process. I think some of the others are just, they're not as high in my mind, from what I'm listening to tonight, as the ones that you've identified within the planning building, what you identified within the whole housing issues, and what you've identified in finance and safety. Those are all higher to me. I mean, I turned something over to the Sustainability Committee, and guess who has to staff that? Me. It's a town manager committee.
Okay.
Now, that maybe work out, and we can always tweak and look at things. But it's a limited resource. We haven't invented a 30-hour day, and we haven't told staff they have to work 65 hours a week like I used to in San Jose. I mean, that will not happen.
Right.
It's not going
Right.
to happen.
And that's,
here.
to be clear, that is not what we should be asking.
But you've identified some really good things that we can summarize. And we'll make some judgment calls and go back to you.
Okay.
when we come back.
Thank you.
And Tony's correct. We have a CIP function that will look at
Thank
those
you.
grants. And they are there. I was as surprised as others. Rebecca and I were talking about this. Where did this grant come from? The MPC grant. And we weren't even, half the applications didn't get approved. I didn't even know we had something in there. So, but we have a vehicle for that.
Thank you.
I don't think we have to jump extra, but what I'm hearing to focus on, what will come back to you, and this is what I'm hearing to focus on, and the other stuff, we'll work it out. And then I have to leave room for myself.
Yeah.
For taking new stuff that popped up because we had something happen.
Right. So can
So I don't know if that makes sense.
I just follow Rebecca's comments? There was a coffee this morning for CIP projects for decarbonization, but San Mateo County Sustainability Department is offering technical support to help with with our $64,000 grant, and I can send you guys
Good.
so to get that technical support.
That's good.
So I will connect you guys so that
Oh, it's helpful to know.
I think we're asking staff to do too many priorities as a result of all of this. And my biggest priority is keep the town financially viable and keep the staff moving in the same direction as the council and the residents want. So I'm going to ask Mark to come back and say, here's what that looks like. You've heard our wish list. And it's fine to talk about wish lists, but I want you to be very clear, at least speaking for myself, I am perfectly open to 6 out of 10 don't work. Because I'd rather have a realistic expectation of things that actually could get done as opposed to nice to haves. And we are in a year where nice to haves aren't going to happen. And even the almost have to haves, maybe we have to be creative on what we can do and what part of that we can't. So that's my request is do come back
We will.
and don't be,
We won't mince any words on that.
yeah, please. Because we've
You're
we've really
judged.
got to make all this work this year, and we want staff to know that we recognize how much they are in fact doing. The things that they're hearing are just things that have historically evolved in a certain way, and we want to get them to a different place, but we're not getting there overnight. So let us know on the July and the December priorities, what's realistic, and let's continue the dialogue is my request. So those are my comments on this last piece. We do need to go to public comment. Somebody had their hand up a long time ago and no longer does. On,
I thought we just had to do it once for the whole.
no.
I would recommend doing it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is Rita Comas Whitney.
Thank you. And I promise I only had a short time in the previous section and just commenting on things that happened in this section. years ago, we talked about having a safety officer to coordinate the safety plan and other items going on in town. I don't know if that could be done, carved out with the current staff or something to look forward to in the future. But please think of that, someone to just coordinate the things that the residents are really looking into. And, appreciate all the hard work. And let's figure out how we can afford to make these things move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Christie C.
Hi, all. Good work tonight. I just wanted to compliment you on the room setup for when a resident is injured. It looks great tonight. Wanted to thank you for that. I do think the safety element is a priority, and to provide public participation. I'm noticing that Los Altos Hills had 2 meetings with 2 different agendas with their goal of spring of 2025 to complete. They also offered a survey, a 10-minute survey, and they offered a safety element update box on their website. And I think those are 4 good things to consider, and you can probably go onto their website and find it. Let's see, I do think as we deal with the safety element and land use, that terminology is extremely important. So, those, what is HCD, what is MU, what is MF, and then a new one just brought up recently. Anyway, if you could, when you roll out this housing element, safety element, have a definition and terminology sheet by right ministerial. And then a new one is reach codes. You may know what reach codes are, but I'm still need to be reminded and look it up periodically. It's my understanding reach codes are beyond state codes, and we reach further than the state has reached. And those type of things and explain to us, because you guys are talking fast with a lot of acronyms. Just remember, we all want to learn too. So thanks for your work on all this tonight. Oh, and I want to say one other thing. I think the town positions, getting our people hired, is so extremely important for our long-term goals that are so important. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands. So at this point, I think we can call the, I don't know what the formal, call the study session closed. Adjourn.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. And I want to assure you that you have a high-performing staff, and I'd like to keep them.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
So, I'm going to be religiously looking at all of this. So you will, it didn't go as exactly as we had all thought because we got into a lot of weeds, but I got a gleaning of the stuff that I need. So thank you for that
Okay.
conversation. And I thank the staff that we have here.
Yeah.
We're really getting a lot done,
They really are, and we thank you all.
very few people. So, and the people who run the internal staff are sitting right there.
Yeah,
All right,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. We're gonna log off and adjourn.
Good job.